Chapter 63. In the wedding rehearsal, the main characters were, of course, the bride and groom. Therefore, as a flower girl, the little fellow could not have too many scenes. She only needed to take a flower basket full of petals, appear before the bride, and sprinkle flowers along the carpet. The reason why she was asked to come to the rehearsal was that he was worried that the child would be too young to walk alone on the carpet under the attention of thousands of people. A wedding was sacred and solemn, so it should be done to the best of its ability. Because of the episode just now, the little fellow did not want to go out to play anymore. Seeing this, she took her out directly and took a taxi to the address sent by Lin Xian, ready to let her play at the rehearsal place. Fang Lei's family was very rich, which she had always known. But it was not until he took the little fellow to the rehearsal place sent by Lin Xian that she suddenly had a more intuitive understanding of Fang Lei's family's financial resources. Because Fang Lei's wedding would be held on a luxurious cruise ship. In recent years, with the development of society, cruise ship tourism had become an important part of the international tourism industry, and the total number of passengers around the world was as many as millions. Therefore, more and more people in Wuxia chose to travel by cruise ship. Cruise ships were no longer a rare thing, but it was rare to see someone like Fang Lei who rented an entire cruise ship just for the sake of holding a wedding. This cruise ship was called Xingmeng, and it was a very luxurious large cruise ship, with a displacement of up to 120,000 tons and a maximum capacity of 3,500 passengers. Xingmeng had only been out of the factory for a short time, so compared with some cruise ships around the dock that had been in service for more than 10 or 20 years, it was particularly eye-catching and even exuded a fascinating sense of science fiction. "Papa, this ship is so big, even bigger than the Buddha." She stood on the dock with the little fellow in his arms. The little fellow looked up at the giant cruise ship in front of her, and could not help but open her mouth slightly and let out such a sigh. Hearing this, she rubbed her little head and said, "The ship is one by one, not one by one, remember?" "Oh, I remember." The little girl nodded blankly, then pointed at the cruise ship and shouted, "Papa, I want to go up and play. I want to take a big ship." "Don't worry. We can only go up when Big Sister comes to pick us up." So, she hid in the shadow of the cruise ship with the little girl in his arms. While telling her a story, he quietly waited for Lin Xian to arrive. It was now afternoon, and the salty sea breeze wrapped around the warm sunlight, making everything around them seem so peaceful. On the pier, the sound of crashing waves could be heard again and again. It was like pleasant music, making people feel comfortable. The big cat jumped out of the little guy's arms and ran to a stone pillar where it could bask in the sun and lay down. Looking at its lazy expression, it looked more and more like a real cat. After a while, Lin Xian appeared at the stairs of the cruise ship with a phone in her hand. She looked down, then waved to Chen Shi and his daughter and shouted, "Chen Shi, come here." After the previous few contacts, the little fellow had completely forgotten the unpleasant incident when she first met Lin Xian. So when Shi came to Lin Xian with her in his arms, the little fellow took the initiative to call out to Lin Xian sweetly, "Big sister, Nian Nian is so good. Come and let Big sister hug you. Okay?" "Okay." The little fellow reached out and then moved from Shi's arms to Lin Xian's. At this time, the big cat, who was squatting on the stone pillar, also saw the situation here, so it quickly jumped down from the stone pillar, turned into a black shadow, and jumped on Shi's shoulder in an instant. "Oh, you have a pet?" Lin Xian glanced at the big cat that suddenly appeared, and was immediately attracted by its obedience, so she reached out and touched the big cat's head. The big cat narrowed its eyes slightly, and after Lin Xian took her hand away, it softly meowed, as if it was greeting Lin Xian. Didn't they say that children can't have pets at home? There seems to be such a saying, but the big cat is different from other pets. It likes to be clean. She explained with a smile. Lin Xian didn't understand this, so she didn't ask anymore. Stardream was very big, and Fang Lei's wedding would be held on the top deck. So Lin Xian took Shi straight to the top deck. In order to have a perfect wedding, Fang Lei had signed a contract with the China Ocean Group as early as half a year ago, booking Star Dream for 3 days. Star Dream had a total of 1751 cabins, 26 elevators, and 18 decks, 14 of which were available for tourists to move around. The ship was so big, so of course it had a lot of supporting facilities. For main restaurants, 2 special restaurants, and 21 bars were just the basic facilities. In addition, there was a bowling alley, a sports field, a swimming pool, a spa, and a children's park. It really had everything, and it was very luxurious. She followed Lin Xian to the top deck, and the first thing that came into view was a huge open-air swimming pool. He looked at the surrounding environment, then looked at the exquisite swimming pool, and couldn't help but sigh. Fang Lei usually doesn't talk much, and she looks like a cold goddess. I didn't expect her to love romance so much. You really can't judge a book by its cover. Hearing this, Lin Xian rolled her eyes at him and said, "Romance is a woman's nature. If I had the money, I would definitely have a romantic wedding like hers in the future. That way, I wouldn't have lived in vain." Well, maybe it's really because poverty has limited my imagination. So before I came here, I didn't think that a wedding could be held on a cruise ship. The two chatted as they walked across the deck. At this time, Lin Xian suddenly thought of something and turned to look at Shi and asked, "Hey, by the way, you and Ying didn't have a wedding, right?" After saying that, before Shi could answer, she covered her mouth and said apologetically, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned this. It's okay." Shi smiled and shook his head, indicating that he didn't mind. However, when Lin Xian mentioned it, it reminded him of some memories, and he couldn't help but sigh. Yes, Nian is already 4 years old, but I still owe Ying a romantic wedding. In fact, 5 years ago, Shi also fantasized about what his wedding with Ying would be like. Unfortunately, Ying didn't seem to like this topic, so Shi never had an in-depth conversation with her on this topic. Therefore, he didn't know what Ying was looking forward to their wedding. Shi looked at the busy wedding staff in front of him and couldn't help but be a little lost in thought. Maybe, compared to a grand and romantic wedding, Ying actually preferred to spend time with each other in a simple and peaceful way, drinking wine and growing old together. Chapter 64. Love was a matter of 2 people. Marriage was a matter of 2 families. Since family was mentioned, the parents' suggestions were naturally important. Therefore, even if Fang Lei was unwilling, she had to compromise in the end. The wedding ceremony could be done in a pure Western style, but the reception of guests and the banquet afterwards must be done according to Chinese standards. Among the 4 ancient civilizations, ancient Egypt, ancient India, and ancient Babylon had long been annihilated in the long river of history because of the invasion of foreign tribes. As the only surviving one, Wuxia not only had a long history of cultural inheritance, but also maintained the continuity of civilization after being invaded by foreign tribes and maintained the long-term vitality of the Chinese civilization. The reason was that Wuxia people had an indelible national spirit in their bones. Over the years, with the continuous infiltration of Western culture, more and more young people began to like the Western festival, but did not care about traditional festivals such as Tomb Sweeping Day and Mid-Autumn Festival. There were 2 sides to everything in the world. It was not necessarily wrong, and it was not unilateral to blame others for worshipping foreign things. Thanks to Fang Lei, Shi and the little fellow also enjoyed the luxury suite on the cruise ship. Although it was not as good as the 5-star hotel they lived in May, it had a different experience. The little fellow was very excited. This was the first time she had been on a cruise ship and the first time she had attended someone's wedding. So, in the middle of the night, she finally fell asleep under the comfort of Shi. The next morning, because in Western culture, if the groom saw the wedding dress before the ceremony, it would be regarded as inauspicious, so Western weddings did not have the part of picking up the bride. Therefore, Fang Lei and her fiancé, Wang Shiwu, had been living on the cruise ship since last night, quietly waiting for the wedding to begin. Fang Lei's father was a college student in the 1980s. After graduation, he entered the state unit. Later, he caught up with the business boom in the 1990s. So he resolutely resigned from his position as a cadre of state-owned enterprises and came to Zhonghai alone to work hard. It took him decades to finally lay a large foundation. Fang Lei's father was highly educated and cultivated. He could be said to be the model of a generation of scholarly businessmen, so he was very popular in the circle of rich people in Zhonghai. Today was his only daughter's big day. So many rich and powerful people would come to support. Early in the morning, countless luxury cars appeared at the dock. Father Fong and Mother Fong both felt that the Western style was not desirable. So no matter how much Fong Lei complained, they were not moved. Instead, they changed into brand new formal attire early in the morning and stood at the dock to personally welcome every guest. When an ordinary family got married, they would usually arrange 30 to 40 tables. Some families would arrange 80 to 100 tables. However, for a wealthy family like the Fong family, who had a wide network of connections and friends all over the world, there would naturally be more guests. Due to the limited number of seats on the top deck, not everyone could get an invitation of the highest standard and go to the top deck to watch the ceremony. As for the guests who were unable to go to the top floor, they were arranged to stay on the lower deck and watch the live broadcast through the big screen. Guests arrived at the cruise ship one after another at 9 o'clock in the morning. Fong Chio's father welcomed every guest with a smile. Suddenly, his assistant ran to his side and whispered to him, "Mr. Fong, the two Mr. Nings from the Ocean Group are here?" "Oh, old Ning is here too. Wasn't he in poor health recently?" Fong Chio's father was a little surprised. He quickly looked in the direction his assistant was pointing and saw Ning Zhonghua in the crowd. Therefore, he immediately walked out from behind the reception area and laughed. "Old Ning, what a rare guest. Let's have a few drinks later." As he spoke, he walked up to Ning Zhonghua and gave him a warm hug. Some of the guests around did not know Ning Zhonghua, but after seeing Fong Chio's father's action, they immediately paid attention and secretly observed Ning Zhonghua, wanting to remember him firmly in their hearts. After the hug, Ning Zhonghua immediately said with a smile, "Old Fong, you're treating me as an outsider. Your precious daughter is getting married, so of course I have to come and support her. Hey, I heard that you were hospitalized some time ago, right? How are you? Are you feeling better?" "I'm fine. I'm in good health now." Fong Chio's father and Ning Zhonghua exchanged a few polite words. Then his eyes fell on Ning Chiotong. "Oh, Chiotong has become prettier again. When are you going to invite me to the wedding?" In order not to steal the bride's limelight, Ning Chiotong specially chose a rather dignified and low-key black gown today. Hearing this, Ning Chiotong smiled. Before she could say anything, Ning Zhonghua laughed and said, "It's still early, still early. My precious daughter is not as sensible as your daughter. She's eager to excel and looks down on all men in the world. I'm so worried. Children and grandchildren have their own lives. As a father, you can't be too nosy." The three of them chatted for a while before Ning Zhonghua wheeled Fong Chio's father back to the reception area. After signing his name on the guest list, Ning Zhonghua laughed and said, "Old Fong, you have a lot of things to do today, so don't worry about us. We'll go up first. You can go greet the other guests. When you're done, we'll meet again." "Okay. Then I'll be rude." Fong Chio's father nodded, then waved his hand to call over his assistant. "Xiao Sun, bring President Ning up first." The assistant nodded. Just as he was about to invite the father and daughter of the Ning family to board the ship, Fong Chio's father stopped him and whispered in his ear, "First row." The assistant nodded calmly. After boarding the ship, he led the father and daughter of the Ning family to the other side of the tunnel. They took the elevator directly to the top deck. She took advantage of the time to bring the little girl to the top deck. At this time, many guests were already seated. Melodious light music echoed above the deck. There were white flowers and exquisite decorations all around. As time went by, the orange-red sun slowly rose from the east, gradually blooming with golden light. Amidst the sea breeze, the atmosphere became more and more lively. She held the invitation. When he realized that there was no seat number on the invitation, he casually sat down in the last row of the VIP seats. After sitting down, the little guy immediately began to move restlessly from left to right. She was so excited. Sister said that when the wedding was about to start, she could go backstage and change into a beautiful white gown. Why didn't she let her change in advance? In fact, It was because Lin Xian was worried that she would dirty the gown. So she didn't give the gown to the little girl. Lin Xian was Fang Lei's main bridesmaid. As Wang Lu was already married, she was not a bridesmaid. Chun Shi looked around. Suddenly, he saw a familiar face in the crowd. Li Shouwen. At this time, Li Shouwen also noticed Chun Shi. He seemed a little surprised to see Chun Shi here. However, out of courtesy, he took the initiative to nod at Chun Shi. Seeing this, Chun Shi nodded back at him. However, at this time, Li Shouwen suddenly froze. Because he remembered something. Therefore, after hesitating for a while, Li Shouwen immediately walked toward Chun Shi. Mr. Chun, how are you? Asterisk, 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 thank you to Big Boss. Still playing for the 34,500 reward. Old man, don't rush me to update. I'm already crying. I'm sincerely recommending something good to you guys. I read it every day anyway. The microtheater allows you to watch the complete version of Steel Alchemist in 2 hours. Not only does it save time, but it also allows you to fully understand the plot and essence of the manga. It's highly recommended. I've watched this anime many years ago, but I've almost forgotten it. It's a masterpiece with 0 negative reviews. In addition, he has commentaries for classic anime such as Fate, The Holy Grail War, and Eva. It allows people like me who want to watch anime, but find it too long and wordy to quickly understand the plot. Other than anime, there are also commentaries for classic movies and TV series. Chapter 65. How have you been? Chun Shi nodded in response. To be honest, he was not familiar with Li Shouwen. And that night at Sally's restaurant, he even injured Zhao Yuan in front of Li Shouwen. Regardless of whether Zhao Yuan was familiar with Li Shouwen or not, at least Zhao Yuan was called by Li Shouwen. Therefore, when Chun Shi injured Zhao Yuan, it was already disrespectful to Li Shouwen. Therefore, Chun Shi did not think that Li Shouwen would have a good impression of him. However, after the two met, Li Shouwen's reaction was somewhat out of his expectations. What's Mr. Chun been busy with recently? After greeting Chun Shi, Li Shouwen sat beside Chun Shi and asked with a smile, taking care of the child. After saying that, Chun Shi rubbed the little one's head. His behavior immediately made the little one unhappy. She quickly reached out and patted Chun Shi's hand. Then, she gently covered her hair with both hands and said in a coquettish voice, "Papa, you're so annoying. Don't touch my hair." The little one's hairstyle today was not simple. Chun Shi woke up early in the morning and followed the steps on the internet step by step to make her a flower girl hairstyle. It was very complicated, but it really looked good, so the little one liked it very much. Really? Haha. Li Shouwen could not help but laugh dryly. He had already seen Chun Shi's information from Zhao Yuan, but his intuition told him that Chun Shi was not simple. If he was really as simple as the information described, how could he explain the blank 5 years in between? It was very rare in today's society for a person to mysteriously lose 5 years' worth of information and not be able to find anything. It was also because of this that when Zhao Yuan wanted to seek revenge on Chun Shi, he was not optimistic about Zhao Yuan and even wanted to advise Zhao Yuan not to pursue the matter anymore. Unfortunately, Zhao Yuan wanted to hurt Lin Xian, and because of this, he angered Li Shouwen. The two parted on bad terms, so Li Shouwen did not know whether Zhao Yuan had sought revenge on Chun Shi or not. Following this period of investigation, Li Shouwen realized that things were getting more and more complicated. Because Zhao Yuan had gone missing. The day after the two of them met, she disappeared. Even the Zhao family did not know where Zhao Yuan had gone. It was as if he had completely disappeared from the face of the earth. No matter how one looked at it, there was something strange about this matter. Hence, the moment Li Shouwen saw Chun Shi, he could no longer suppress the doubts in his heart. He pretended to ask casually, "Oh, by the way, I wanted to ask you, did Zhao Yuan come to you again after that?" Hearing this, Chun Shi did not immediately answer. Instead, he glanced at Li Shouwen without batting an eyelid. Seeing this, Li Shouwen immediately chuckled and explained, "Zhao Yuan and I can be considered acquaintances. Mr. Chan, you are Lin Xian's friend. If he still finds trouble with you, I can be a peacemaker and have a good talk with him. After all, it's better to squash enmity rather than keep it alive. After hearing Li Shouwen's words, Shi shook his head and said calmly, "He didn't find me." "Oh." Li Shouen nodded, then said somewhat unwillingly, "All right, if you need any help, just let me know. I don't have your number yet. If you don't mind, let me know." As he spoke, Li Shouen took out his phone and waited for Shi to give him the number. But at this moment, a voice suddenly came from behind them. "Mr. Chan?" Shi looked back and saw Ning Zhonghua and Ning Chotong coming up behind him, side by side. "Mr. Ning? Haha, what a coincidence, Mr. Chan." Ning Zhonghua laughed as he came to Shi's side, then sighed. "We are really fated to meet at someone else's wedding. This time, I didn't arrange it on purpose?" After saying this, Ning Zhonghua laughed loudly, as if meeting Shi here was something to be happy about. "Mr. Chan, hello?" Ning Chotong looked at Shi with a complicated expression, then lowered her head to greet him. She had already heard about Zhang Jiada from Ning Zhonghua, so she truly understood how powerful Shi was. Therefore, when she spoke, her tone and expression naturally carried a little bit of respect. Ning Zhonggua's sudden appearance caught Li Shouen off guard. They were all in the same circle, so how could he not know Ning Zhonghua and Ning Chotong? He also had his own shipping company, but compared to the Ning family's ocean group, it was really a small business. Many of his company's orders were even leftovers from the ocean shipping group, and then they were casually outsourced to him. "Uncle Ning, Sister Ning, hello?" After Ning Chotong and Shi finished talking, Li Shouen quickly stood up and chose a very suitable time to appear in front of Ning Zhonghua. Ning Zhonghua seemed to have seen Li Shouen at this time. He turned his head and laughed. "Oh, it's Shouen? Where's your dad? Why don't I see him?" "My dad is still abroad, so I can only come on his behalf today." Oh, okay." Ning Zhonghua nodded, as if he had no intention of talking to him in depth. Seeing this, Li Shouen could not help but feel anxious. Although the ocean shipping group had been handed over to Ning Chotong, Ning Zhonggua's words still had a decisive effect. In fact, Li Shouwen's relationship with the Ning family was quite deep. The reason why he was named as one of the top 10 youths in Zhonghai was mainly because of his shipping company. This company was built by him, and the reason why it developed so quickly was because of Ning Zhonggua's help. A small company with no qualifications in just a few years, through the outsourcing of the ocean shipping group, became one of the top 10 shipping companies in Zhonghai. What did it rely on? It relied on face. It was his dad's face. Ning Chotong looked down on Li Shouen, because she felt that this person lived too superficially. Although they were all rich second-generation heirs living in the shadow of their fathers, Ning Chotong could take charge of the entire ocean shipping group on her own. Li Shouen, on the other hand, only knew how to deal with the media in his empty company, busy with magazines and newspapers, and promote his name as one of the top 10 youths in Zhonghai. His so-called projects were, in fact, all obtained through connections. Therefore, after Ning Chotong took charge of the ocean shipping group, she started to reduce the number of outsourced projects, intentionally or unintentionally, in the name of maximizing profits. This move made Li Shouwen's life a little difficult, so he had already started to plan to wait for his dad to come back to China and bring him along to visit Ning Zhonghua. He did not expect to see Ning Zhonghua here today, so he was caught off guard. Li Shouen was still thinking of ways to strike up a conversation with Ning Zhonghua, but at this moment, Lin Xian, wearing a white off-shoulder bridesmaid dress, suddenly appeared. She stood by the railing on the deck, waved at Shi from afar, and shouted, "Shi, over here. Quickly bring Nianyan over to change. The wedding is about to begin. Thank you to Katatsumiri for the 10,000 reward. Old man, don't rush me too much. Really? Indeed, your urging can affect me. If it wasn't for the fact that I really couldn't write, I would have done it long ago. If I were to write the traditional face-slapping chapter of Nianyan being pushed down, I would write at least 10 chapters. The face-slapping wouldn't stop at all." Chapter 66. Just as Ning Zhonghua was about to send Li Shouen away and sit down to chat with Shi, Lin Xian appeared. Her appearance immediately attracted the attention of many people. Lin Xian was very beautiful today. Although she had already put on the simplest bridesmaid makeup in order not to steal the bride's limelight and wore the simplest white dress, it still could not hide her beauty. "Excuse me. I'll excuse myself for a moment." She stood up, nodded slightly at Ning Zhonghua, and walked towards Lin Xian with the little fellow in his arms. "You go ahead, we'll talk later." Ning Zhonghua hurriedly stepped aside and gestured for him to go ahead. Li Shouwen was confused by his actions. Looking at this situation, Ning Zhonghua's relationship with she was much better than he had imagined. Also, Li Shouwen had a feeling. Ning Zhonghua seemed to be lowering his status in front of Shi. What kind of show was this? Li Shouwen had not recovered from his shock, but Ning Zhonghua had already walked away. When Li Shouwen finally reacted and wanted to chase after Ning Zhonghua to chat, Ning Zhonghua had already walked towards the first row of the VIP seats under the guidance of his assistant. That place was not a place anyone could sit, so Li Shouwen had no choice but to stop in his tracks. Then, he turned to look in the direction that Shi had left. He saw Lin Xian carrying the little fellow and chatting happily with Shi as they walked towards the staircase. Shi carried the little fellow to Lin Xian. After sizing her up, he teased, "You're so beautiful today. Don't steal the bride's limelight." Hearing this, Lin Xian could not help but spit at Shi. Her face was a little red, and her tone was a little shy. She complained, "Don't talk nonsense. There's only one main character today. I'm not as pretty as her." Although that was what she said, Lin Xian felt that Shi's words made sense, so she decided to touch up her makeup later. For example, she would make her nose shorter and her skin tone darker. This was what a bridesmaid should do. "Sister, hug." This was the first time the little fellow had asked her to hug him. So Lin Xian was stunned for a moment, and then quickly took the little fellow from Shi's arms. After she hugged the little fellow immediately wrapped his arms around her neck and leaned his head on her snow-white shoulders. The reason why the little girl was so enthusiastic was actually not because of the little dress that belonged to her. Girls liked beautiful things. Even children were no exception. Was not an exception. So after wearing it once yesterday, the little fellow was completely mesmerized. Because Lin Xian was dressed as the main bridesmaid, when the guests saw her, they would stand to the side and make way for her. At the same time, they would smile and nod at her. The two of them walked side by side on the deck for a while. After seeing that there were not many people around, Lin Xian pretended to be nonchalant and asked, "Who is that woman in black? Why do I feel like I've seen her before?" She thought for a moment before realizing that she was referring to Ning Qiutong. So he introduced her. "She's Ning Qiutong. Li Shouwen also knows her. So I guess you've seen her before." Hearing this, Lin Xian was silent. When she sent Shi home that day, she saw some things with her own eyes. In order to see the woman's face clearly, Lin Xian especially waited until the woman left before leaving. So she could not be wrong. The woman in the black dress was the woman who suddenly knelt in front of Shi that night. After thinking for a while, Lin Xian continued to ask, "Li Shouwen's friends are not ordinary people. Didn't you just return to Zhonghai? How did you get to know them?" "Because of a misunderstanding, I became friends with his father, so I went to their house a few times." After hearing his words, Lin Xian secretly glanced at Shi. He was not telling the truth. But since Shi did not want to say, she naturally did not ask anymore. Thinking of this, she could not help but snort lightly, and then did not want to talk to Shi anymore. Carrying the little fellow, she quickly walked into a room around the corner. "Wait here, I'll bring her to change." "Okay." Bam! The sound of the door closing was a little loud. She did not seem to notice Lin Xian's strange behavior. After seeing her close the door, he stood by the railing and looked down at the scenery below. After waiting for a while, Lin Xian still had not come out, but the sound system on the cruise ship rang. The band on the top deck began to play. The string quartet performed a soothing and melodious classical music. After the guests on all levels of the cruise ship heard the music, they stopped the noise and sat quietly in their seats, waiting for the wedding to begin. About 10 minutes later, the cruise ship set sail with a deep and drawn-out whistle. The flower girl was not the bridesmaid, so the cuter the better. So when Lin Xian came out with the little fellow again, the little fellow had changed into a top Israeli wedding dress brand, Galia. Lahav custom-made white puffy gauze dress. She was wearing a pair of white princess shoes and a garland made of real flowers on her head. She looked like a little angel who had descended from the heavens to the mortal world. Nian is so cute. Come, let daddy kiss you. Seeing his daughter's cute little face, She was suddenly overjoyed and quickly stepped forward to kiss her. However, the little fellow was now proud. Before She's mouth could get close to her, the little fellow pressed her forehead and pushed him away. She pouted and said with disgust, "No, Papa is annoying. You'll dirty me." After that, she buried her head in Lin Xian's shoulder again. She was a little speechless. He was actually disliked by his baby daughter. "Stop it, the wedding is about to begin. Go back and sit down. I have to take Nian to find Lei Lei. See you later." After that, Lin Xian took the little fellow to Fang Lei's room. Seeing this, she could only shrug helplessly and then walked toward the deck. The deck was packed with people, and the VIP seats had long been filled. Many children did not want to watch the broadcast, so they did not listen to the adults at all and ran to the top deck to see the live scene. Since they were guests, it was naturally impossible to chase them out of the top deck, so there were more and more people on the top deck. She didn't like to join in the crowd, but in order to take a few beautiful photos of the little girl as a souvenir, he had to apologize while trying his best to squeeze into the crowd. It wasn't until he stepped on the red carpet that he finally stopped. The red carpet crossed the entire deck. On one side was the flower arch of the wedding stage, and on the other side was the passage for the bride and groom. Suddenly, the music stopped. Then, a wedding officiant dressed as a priest slowly stepped on the red carpet and walked toward the wedding stage. After the priest finished his speech, the music started again. But this time, it was the wedding march that was playing. The groom, Wang Shiwu, slowly appeared at the end of the passage under the priest's introduction. After the groom stood on the stage, the best man and the bridesmaid walked up the passage one by one. After the best man and bridesmaid were in place, she finally perked up. Because the little fellow was going to appear, others' focus was on the bride and groom, but his focus was all on the flower girl. If he could, he would probably laugh out loud without hesitation. "That's my daughter. This was the pride of a father. Thank you to Mosafanzi for the 10,000 reward." The first group number of this book, 511793123. Chapter 67. She looked at the entrance of the passage nervously. Suddenly, the little girl appeared. She was like a cute little angel, wearing a white fluffy gauze dress, and suddenly appeared in front of everyone's eyes. The little girl's expression was a little nervous, and her little face was very tight. Perhaps she didn't expect there to be so many people here. This was the grandest occasion she had ever experienced in her life. The red carpet in front of her led to the wedding stage, and both sides were densely packed with people. The little girl was only a little more than a meter tall, so the adults on both sides were like two high palace walls, blocking all of her sight. As far as she could only see the other side of the stage from the end of the red carpet. Because there were too many people, she couldn't see where Papa was, and she couldn't help but feel more nervous. She thought this was a fun thing to do, but it wasn't until she stood here that she realized everything was different from what her sister said. Then, the little girl's mind went blank because of nervousness. Whose child is this? So cute. That's right. If only my daughter was as beautiful as her. This young lady is truly a great beauty in the making. Look, our family is blushing when looking at this girl. Brat, how old are you? She stood in the crowd, listening to everyone talking about the little girl who suddenly appeared, and suddenly felt very proud. He slightly turned his body, hoping that the little girl could see him. But because there were too many people, the little girl didn't notice him. The little girl stood at the entrance of the passage for at least 5 seconds. At this time, a staff member of the wedding company quietly urged her behind. "Nian, go. Just walk to the stage on the opposite side." The little girl tilted her head and glanced at the staff member. After taking a deep breath, she slowly took the first step. She sprinkled flowers every 3 steps, and before she reached the end, she had to sprinkle all the petals in the basket. This was her task. It sounded very simple, and during the rehearsal last night, she had easily walked through it twice. But when it was actually carried out, the little girl found that she actually forgot how to walk. How should she walk? It was just like writing a word. After writing it, he felt that the word shouldn't be like this. The little fellow's feet were very stiff, and he even began to wonder how far he should take each step. When she saw her expression, he knew that she was nervous. A 4-year-old child walking alone on the red carpet under the watchful eyes of thousands of people. One could imagine how much pressure she was under right now. She kept waving at her. But the little girl didn't even look at him and kept walking forward. Seeing this, she immediately kicked the big cat sitting at his feet and whispered, "Go to the front and lead the way for her, but don't walk on the carpet." The big cat was very smart. It immediately understood what she meant, so it immediately jumped in the direction of the little guy. The little guy was short to begin with. When he saw the big cat running over from the side of the carpet, he immediately noticed it. "Meow!" The big cat softly called out to the little guy. This made the little guy's heart calm down a lot, and her footsteps finally became more natural. She walked towards the stage while scattering flowers, and the big cat was 1 or 2 meters in front of her, leading her along the red carpet. Maybe it was because all her attention was on the big cat, so when the little guy passed by she didn't even hear she calling her. After walking about 2/3 of the way, the little guy's tense little face finally showed a natural smile, and it was obvious that she had relaxed a lot. But at this moment, an accident happened. Just as the little guy was counting her steps and scattering flowers as she walked, she suddenly lost her balance and fell heavily to the ground. As if replaying the scene from yesterday, the way she fell was exactly the same as yesterday. But this time, the big cat didn't cover her in time. Amidst the exclamations of the crowd, the little guy fell heavily to the ground, and the petals in the flower basket scattered all over the ground. And her sudden fall was instantly shown to everyone through the broadcast on the big screen. Meow! When the big cat heard the movement, it immediately turned around and ran to Nianyan's side. She also reacted and wanted to go forward to help her up. But after hesitating for a moment, she chose to call back the big cat, and at the same time, he transmitted his voice to Nianyan. "Baby, don't be afraid. Stand up. Daddy is behind you. Stand up and be brave. You've already walked so far. Stand up and keep walking. Just hold on a little longer, and you'll reach the end." Perhaps it was because of She's voice transmission, the little guy finally came back to his senses. She quickly got up from the ground and picked up the flower basket again. Under the accompaniment of the music, she continued to walk toward the stage not far away. Although this fall didn't hurt her skin, it did hurt a little. So the little guy could only limp towards the stage. At this time, Lin Xian also walked to the bottom of the stage, stood at the end of the red carpet, and opened his hands to wait for her arrival. But unfortunately, she hadn't finished walking. But there were no more petals in the flower basket. The little guy remembered her mission, so even if there were no more petals, she still made the gesture of sprinkling the flowers. Although it was only air that was sprinkled, as she walked, the little guy's tears suddenly fell. Just like that, she silently walked on the red carpet while crying. The cameraman was very smart. After the little guy fell, he immediately moved the camera to the bride, who was about to appear at the end of the aisle. Finally, Nianyan walked to the front of the stage. Lin Xian hugged her, then carried her around to the temporary lounge behind the stage. The moment they left, the crowd on the deck suddenly burst into loud cheers. The bride appeared, and the scene of her falling no one seemed to have seen at all. In the lounge, Lin Xian put the little guy on a chair, then gently wiped away her tears. "Baby, does it hurt? Don't cry, it's okay." The little guy didn't cry out loud. But at this moment, she finally couldn't hold it in anymore. Just as Lin Xian was showing concern for her, the little guy suddenly jumped into Lin Xian's arms, then cried out in a sobbing voice, Sister, I'm sorry. I screwed up. It's okay. It's okay. Baby, you've already done very well. Don't cry, don't cry. Lin Xian hugged the little guy tightly, constantly comforting her. She was very sad and blamed herself, so she kept repeating, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. At this moment, Chun Shi finally rushed over. Lin Xian glanced at Chun Shi, then motioned for Chun Shi to come over. She was the main bridesmaid, so she couldn't just leave. Lin Xian gently pushed the little guy into Chun Shi's arms. At this moment, the little guy finally saw Chun Shi, so she cried even harder. Chapter 68. Well, baby, don't cry. Chun Shi gently patted the little fellow on the back, and then gently comforted her. It's normal to fall. You don't have 4 legs like the big cat. Daddy often falls down. Didn't you fall down once yesterday? Why didn't you cry yesterday? But today you cry like a little kitten. Hearing this, the little fellow raised her head from Chun Shi's arms, and then sobbed and sadly blamed herself. It's my fault. I was the flower girl for my sister, but I fell down and the petals were all gone. I'm so sad. I'm so sad. The more the little fellow spoke, the sadder she became, and her snot and tears could not stop flowing. Chun Shi quickly took out a few pieces of paper and wiped her face. Then he held the little fellow in his arms and comforted her. It's okay. It's okay. Sister won't blame you, and Daddy won't blame you. It's not terrible to fall down. What's terrible is not having the courage to stand up. Understand? The little fellow did not speak, but her crying was much softer. Seeing this, Chun Shi gently patted her on the back again and said softly, You're still young, and you'll definitely encounter different kinds of difficulties in the future. Remember Daddy's words, don't be afraid when you encounter difficulties in the future, and don't cry, but face them with strength and courage. In this way, you won't fall in the same place for the second time, okay? It seemed that his comforting words were effective. The little fellow lay in his arms and gradually stopped crying. On the stage, separated by a wall, the bride and groom said, I do to each other under the inquiry of the officiator. Behind the stage, the little fellow lay in Chun Shi's arms, nodded gently and said, Okay. The cruise ship slowly sailed away, and several seagulls flew over the cruise ship. Suddenly, there was an earth-shattering cheer on the cruise ship. That was the heartfelt blessing of everyone to the newlyweds. The ceremony was over, and the host asked everyone to move to the dining room through the sound system. Then, Lin Xian rushed to the lounge in a hurry. She turned the corner, and just as she entered the lounge, she saw Chun Shi standing on the bow of the ship, holding the little fellow's arms with both hands and holding her high in the air. Papa, I'm flying. Woo-woo, I'm flying. The cruise ship cut through the waves like a pair of scissors, cutting a long crack in the sea. The little fellow was suspended in mid-air, but after looking down at the sea beneath her feet, she wasn't afraid at all. Instead, she was dancing with excitement. Chun Shi, what are you doing? Seeing this scene, Lin Xian was scared out of her wits. She hurriedly ran to Chun Shi's side to take the little guy. What kind of father are you? Do you know how dangerous this is? This was a cruise ship. If you fall down, you'll immediately be smashed to pieces. After hugging the little fellow tightly in his arms, Lin Xian glanced below the bow with lingering fear. Then he gave Chun Shi a fierce kick. But Chun Shi's leg felt like it was made of iron, and her high heels were already squeezing her toes tightly. This bump caused her foot to hurt like hell. Therefore, she couldn't help but curse angrily. F***ck. Chun Shi looked at her helplessly. Just as he was about to explain, Lin Xian had already carried the little fellow and walked quickly to the restaurant. Hey, that's my daughter. Get lost. How can you take care of your daughter like this? Chun Shi stood at the bow of the ship and shouted helplessly. However, what responded to him was Lin Xian's angry roar. In Restaurant 1, Father Fong invited Ning Zhonghua to take a seat. The people at this table were not relatives or friends. They were all well-known rich and powerful people in Zhonghai. Ning Zhonghua exchanged a few pleasantries with Father Fong. then greeted some of his acquaintances who were already at the table. Then, he quietly called Ning Chotong and ordered, "Go find Mr. Chan and see if you can invite him over." Hearing this, Ning Chotong couldn't help but frown and ask, "He's not even a member of this circle. Is it appropriate for us to invite him over?" As she spoke, she motioned for Ning Zhonghua to look at Father Fong, the host. "Listen to Dad, go. Being on good terms with him will do us no harm. No matter how rich we are, we need to be alive to spend it, right? Mr. Chun is a hidden expert, but as long as he is willing to do something, then there will be a day when his name will spread far and wide. When that time comes, they won't go directly to Mr. Chun. They will have to go through me. Do you understand what I mean?" "I understand, but I don't think he will come." Ning Chotong said this, but she still turned and walked out. Inviting him over was just to express their attitude. As for whether he would come or not, that was another question. Ning Chotong walked slowly from the deepest part of the venue to the door, carefully scanning the guests at each table. Finally, she found Chun Shi in a corner. Lin Xian was the main bridesmaid, so after carrying the little girl into the dining room, she had to return the little girl to Chun Shi. Then, she changed into the toast dress with Fang Lei. Chun Shi's table was very interesting. It seemed to be a table for women and children. At the 12 tables, he was the only man. The others were all women and children. Ning Chotong stood not far away, listening to Chan Shi and a few women talking about children's education. She couldn't help but feel a little absent-minded. 100,000 yuan was not even enough for her to buy a bag. It was also because of this 100,000 yuan that she almost killed Ning Zhonghua. Therefore, after this incident, Ning Chotong's personality changed a lot. In the past, she was the female president who had just taken charge of the Ocean Group. Her whole body exuded a sharp aura, like a sharp blade. Her imposing manner was enough to make everyone unconsciously bow their heads in front of her. She always meant what she said. As long as she made a judgment, she would absolutely believe in her own judgment. It wasn't until that day, when she helplessly knelt in front of Chun Shi, that she finally realized where she had gone wrong. Maybe this was a good thing. She was born with a silver spoon in her mouth. After all, she had to go through some things to transform and become more perfect. After hesitating for a moment, Ning Chotong came behind Chun Shi and said softly, "Mr. Chun." Chun Shi looked back and saw that it was Ning Chotong. So he asked, "Miss Ning, what's the matter?" "My father wants to invite you to his table. Do you think it's okay?" Ning Chotong pointed to the deepest part of the venue. Seeing this, Chun Shi immediately shook his head and said politely, "No, it's okay. I have a child here, so it's not that troublesome." "Okay, take your time." After Chun Shi rejected her, Ning Chotong didn't say anything more. She nodded at him gently and went back. After Ning Chotong left, a woman next to Chun Shi asked with a smirk, "Young man? Who's that girl? She's pretty." "A friend." Chun Shi replied politely. "A friend? You have such a beautiful female friend?" The woman didn't seem to believe it. Before Chun Shi had time to explain, she said with a smirk, "That bridesmaid is also your friend, right?" TSK, young people these days are amazing. Her words, which were full of meaning, immediately caused the other big sisters at the table to laugh. Seeing this, Chun Shi could only smile and say, "She's really a friend. Don't tell me you all think that there's no such thing as a simple friendship between a man and a woman?" "No." Hearing this, the big sisters immediately replied in unison, "You guys are so shallow." After saying this, Chun Shi also laughed with them. The women were just joking, so Chun Shi didn't take it to heart, because in reality, his relationship with Ning Chotong could not even be considered as a friend. Chapter 69. During lunch, Chun Shi talked with several older sisters about how to educate children, which gave Chun Shi a lot of inspiration. For example, don't hold the child all the time and let her walk around more. Children must walk more, and walking is good for joint development. At the same time, exercise will also increase the child's lung capacity. The stronger the respiratory organ, the stronger the vitality naturally. In addition, more sun exposure to prevent osteoporosis, which is conducive to the healthy growth of children. Although there was Chun-Shi, and Nyenyen's body absolutely could not have any problems, the older sister's advice was still very pertinent. These older sisters were also experienced. In just the time it took to eat a meal, they could see how much Chun-Shi doted on the little guy, so they earnestly advised him to learn how to properly refuse. It was good to spoil his daughter, but he couldn't spoil her too much. Blindly spoiling and doting would harm the child. The cruise ship was still in the process of cruising and would not return until dinner. So after lunch, Chun-Shi took the little fellow back to the suite and let the big cat play hide-and-seek with the little fellow in the room. And he turned on the TV to watch Where Are We Going, Dad? This was also the older sister's advice. Otherwise, Chun-Shi would not have known that there was such a variety show about parent-child interaction in the world. Some of the children were older than Nyenyen, and some were younger than her. As soon as the theme song was played, the little fellow had already heard the sound and ran over. Then she sat next to Chun-Shi with the big cat in her arms and watched with him. After watching for a while, the little fellow pointed to a little boy who was being difficult on the TV and giggled, "Papa, that brother is so silly. He's crying. So shameful." Looking at her complacent look, she had probably forgotten that she was crying in the morning. Hearing this, Chun-Shi couldn't help poking her little face and said with a smile, "You know how to be shy. Then don't be like this brother in the future, crying all the time." "I'm not going to cry." The little fellow was still so proud. The father and daughter chatted and joked while watching TV. At this time, a knock suddenly sounded. "Sister is here. I'll open the door." Lin Xian said that she would come and play with her after she was done. So the little girl immediately jumped off the sofa and ran to open the door. However, when she opened the door, she didn't see Sister Lin Xian, but the uncle she had seen a few times before. "Uncle, who are you looking for?" The little fellow stood behind the door and poked her head out, asking knowingly. Standing outside the door were Ning Zhonghua and Ning Qiutong. They had met this morning. Ning Zhonghua lowered his head and glanced at her. He knew that the little fellow was pretending to be strange, so he laughed and said, "Little darling, I'm here to find your father. Can you let us in?" "Oh." The little fellow nodded, but did not move aside. Instead, she looked back at Chun-Shi in the room. Chun-Shi had heard the movement at the door, so he sat up and waved to her, motioning her to come back. The little fellow jumped into Chun-Shi's arms, and then said in a muffled voice, "Papa, that old uncle is here to see you again." "I know." Chun-Shi pinched her little face, and then shouted to the door, "Mr. Ning, the child is not sensible. Please come in." Hearing this, Ning Zhonghua gently pushed the door open, then looked at Chun-Shi and laughed. "Mr. Chen, am I disturbing you?" "It's all right. Please sit down." Chun-Shi pointed to the sofa next to him. After they sat down, he asked, "What can I do for you?" Ning Zhonghua smiled. After sorting out his words, he slowly said, "When we were eating just now, I talked to a few friends about you. This you don't mind, do you?" Chun-Shi shook his head with a smile and replied, "It's all right. I don't mind." That's good, that's good." Ning Zhonghua nodded and seemed to be relieved, so he continued, "After one of my friends heard about your medical skills, he asked me to ask you if you can completely cure his diabetes." "Diabetes?" Hearing this, Chun-Shi couldn't help but feel a little dumbfounded. He suddenly knew that Ning Zhonghua had bragged about his magical skills outside. "It can't be cured?" Ning Zhonghua carefully probed. "Can be cured." Chun-Shi nodded. After glancing at Ning Zhonghua, an idea popped up in his mind. So he slowly said, "Diabetes is not a terminal disease. As long as you take the pill I gave you last time, you will naturally be cured, but..." Here came the point. Seeing this, Ning Zhonghua immediately leaned forward slightly, looking like he was all ears. Chun-Shi raised a finger and smiled. 1 million per pill, and the actual effect is not as good as the one you took before. Some difficult diseases may require a few more pills." After saying this, he looked at Ning Qiutong thoughtfully. Of course, Ning Qiutong knew why Chun-Shi was looking at her, so her whole pretty face immediately blushed. She was a little embarrassed and quickly said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Chun. I really didn't recognize you before. Don't say any more, it's all in the past." Chun Shi smiled and interrupted her, then continued to say to Ning Zhonghua, "There are a few diseases that my pills can't cure. In Chinese medicine, I can't cure the 4 major syndromes of wind, tuberculosis, and diarrhea. In Western medicine, I can't cure AIDS, cancer, leukemia, rheumatoid arthritis, and amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which are listed as the world's 5 most difficult diseases in the world by the World Health Organization. As for other diseases such as diabetes and cirrhosis, if you take a few more pills, you can slowly recover." In fact, it was not that he couldn't cure these so-called terminal diseases, but that they were too troublesome. These terminal diseases either involved cellular lesions or the central nervous system. If he wanted to cure them completely, in addition to taking immortal medicine, Chun Shi also had to use his true essence to carefully comb the patient's body. For the current him, the burden and consumption were a little too great. After listening to Chun Shi's words, Ning Zhonghua nodded repeatedly and said, "Yes, Mr. Chun. 1 pill from you can guarantee that the disease will be cured. It's 10,000 times better than going to the hospital and constantly tormenting. That's it. Come to me the day after tomorrow, and I'll give you 10 pills first. Okay, then we won't bother you. Take a seat." After Ning Zhonghua and Ning Chodong gently closed the door and left, the little fellow came to Chen Shi and asked in a sweet voice, "Papa, can you cure diseases? Of course, didn't Papa just cure you yesterday?" Chapter 70. After Ning Zhonghua left, the little fellow jumped into Chun Shi's arms again, and then continued to watch where Daddy went with Chun Shi. The little fellow watched where Daddy went, but her focus was different from Chun Shi's. What she liked was the strange scenery and games, while Chun Shi watched the interaction between the cute girl and Daddy. After watching the first episode, Chun Shi wanted to show her the second episode, but the little fellow didn't want to watch it anymore. Instead, she leaned her little head forward and said to Chun Shi expectantly, "Papa, I also want to play 123 Wooden Man." "Okay, Daddy will play with you." Chun Shi touched her little head and then stood up with her in his arms. In fact, games like hide-and-seek and 123 Wooden Man were more fun with more people. Chun Shi thought for a moment and asked the big cat to play with him. So the little fellow leaned against the wall and counted. Chun Shi and the big cat stood behind her and moved toward her like snails. 1, 2, 3, Wooden Man. After the little fellow shouted, she immediately jumped and turned around, but Chen Shi and the big cat seemed to have never moved. After several times, the little fellow didn't catch any trace of their movements, so she couldn't help but pout. When she turned around again, this time she quickly shouted, 123. Without even calling out to the Wooden Man, the little fellow hurriedly turned her head. Just after she turned her head, Chun Shi pretended to be panicked, made an extremely exaggerated posture, and constantly swayed his center of gravity from side to side, as if he was completely unstable. "I caught you. You moved. You moved." The little fellow jumped and clapped her hands, then pointed at Chun Shi and giggled. "Well, I was caught by you. It's my turn to count 123. Chun Shi pretended to be regretful and said, "I'll be Wooden Man." The little guy quickly ran to Chun Shi's side, then pulled the big cat back to the corner, ready to start another round. Chun Shi, on the other hand, did what she did just now. He slowly leaned against the wall and shouted, 1, 2, 3, Wooden Man. After saying that, he imitated the little fellow and turned around. The little girl pursed her lips and looked very serious. She had just taken a step with her left foot and her little hand was still waving in the air. When she saw Chun Shi turn around, she tried her best to stop her body from shaking. Chun Shi pretended not to see her move, so he turned around and started counting again. Most of the children nowadays spent their childhood in the company of toys and cartoons. It wasn't that they didn't like to play games such as 123 Wooden Dummies, hide and seek, but because there was no one to play with. Chun Shi was very patient. As long as the little girl was happy, he could play with her all day. So, when Lin Xian finished everything and came to find them, the father and daughter were still playing 123 wooden dummies in the room. She didn't know why the relationship between the little fellow and Lin Xian had improved by leaps and bounds. Lin Xian was just an ordinary big sister in the eyes of the little fellow, but after attending Fang Lei's wedding, the little fellow began to like Lin Xian very much. So when she heard the knock on the door, she ran to open it excitedly. This time it was Lin Xian standing outside the door. When Lin Xian saw that she was sweating profusely, her first reaction was to take her to the bathroom and wash her face with a hot towel. "What are you playing? Are you having so much fun?" 123 wooden dummies. It's so fun. After Lin Xian washed her face, the little fellow's whole face was still red, looking like a ripe apple. "Have you been playing for a long time? Are you tired?" "Tired. But it's fun." Lin Xian gently tapped the tip of her little nose, then carried her out of the bathroom. "Drink some water. Children need to drink more water." After pouring a glass of water for the little fellow and letting her gulp it down, Lin Xian looked at Chen Shi and praised. "When a man takes care of a child, not many are as patient as you." Hearing this, Chen Shi suddenly smiled and said, "This is my daughter. If I don't have patience for her, who will?" Lin Xian smiled and didn't say anything. Then she took the bouquet she brought and handed it to the little fellow. "Big sister brought you a bouquet of flowers. Do you like it?" "I like it. It's so beautiful. It smells so good." The little fellow took the bouquet and smelled it, then suddenly smiled happily. She had seen this bouquet yesterday, but Lin Xian didn't allow her to touch it. She didn't expect that she would give it to her today. At this time, she said thoughtfully, "This is the bride's bouquet, right? I heard that after the bridesmaid receives the bouquet, it's best to dry it and leave it at home for a good omen. If you give it to her like this, I'm afraid this bouquet won't live past tonight." "I don't believe in that." Lin Xian shook her head and pinched the little fellow's little face, then looked at Shi thoughtfully and said, "Happiness isn't given by others. It's fought for by oneself." "That's insightful." Shi gave her a thumbs up, then continued to smile and said, "Yesterday I heard from Fang Lei that you seem to have been single all this time. Since happiness is fought for by oneself, why don't you fight for it? This woman is an old lady after 28. She can't be single forever, right?" Hearing this, Lin Xian's expression changed, as if she was a little angry. "It's none of your business." Her voice wasn't loud, and after she finished speaking, she turned her head and played with the little fellow. It seemed that she didn't want to talk to Shi anymore. Seeing this, Shi could only smile awkwardly and quickly apologize to her. "Sorry, I said too much, humph." Lin Xian snorted softly, but still didn't say anything. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Shi looked at the TV and didn't dare to say anything more. After Lin Xian played with the little fellow for a while, she seemed to have calmed down. She turned her head again, looked at him and asked, "After dinner, the cruise ship will go out to sea again and will return the day after tomorrow. You are going to stay until the day after tomorrow?" "I'm going to take her back later. We've been out for a few days. It's almost time to go back to kindergarten." Lin Xian was stunned for a moment, as if she didn't expect them to leave so soon, so she immediately became a little anxious and said quickly, "It's rare to have such an opportunity. Why don't you stay for a few more days? Now the country is advocating to reduce the burden. The child is only 4 years old. There's no need to send her to kindergarten in such a hurry, right?" She was choked by her words. After thinking about it, he replied seriously, "I mainly want her to develop a habit. She's more than 4 years old, so the sooner she gets used to the school environment, the faster she can adapt to primary school in the future. But there's no need to rush in these 2 days, right? She's only 4 years old. You're suppressing a child's nature. Besides, she's only in the middle class, right? Most of the time she goes to kindergarten. She's just playing with the teacher." After saying that, Lin Xian looked at the little fellow and asked, "Nian, do you want to play on the cruise ship for 2 more days? Sister will take you to the children's park. You haven't been there yet, right?" "I want to go. I want to go to the children's park." When it came to playing, the little fellow immediately became excited and wanted to stand up with a bouquet of flowers. Lin Xian hugged the little fellow and glanced at Shi as if to show off. Seeing this, Chan, she could only shake his head and smile bitterly. I only applied for 7 days of leave from the teacher. Today is already the 7th day. Give me the phone, I'll talk to the teacher. Chapter 71. Papa, Papa. Where are we going? I'm not afraid of anything as long as you're here. The little fellow stood on the sofa, clapped her hands excitedly, and then sang along with the music on Lin Xian's mobile phone. However, after the little fellow finished singing, Chun, she didn't continue singing, so she was immediately unhappy. She stood on the sofa and stomped her feet, and then said loudly, Papa, you don't want to play with me anymore. Hearing this, Chun, she smiled bitterly and said quickly, Okay, let's sing again. Papa will sing with you. She had sung 5 times, and she could only sing 2 lines each time, but she still enjoyed it. It wasn't that Chun she couldn't sing. With his control over his body, it was a simple matter for him to sing well. However, he always felt a little embarrassed, especially when Big Cat and Lin Xian were also listening. Felt weird. At this time, Lin Xian also paused the music. She played the music again and then shouted to Chun Shi, It's a good thing that the child is willing to learn to sing. You should cooperate with her. Okay, I'm wrong. Let's sing again. Papa will sing with you. The prelude sounded. The little fellow didn't learn English, so she didn't know what they were talking about. The main song was not as catchy as the chorus, so she couldn't remember it after listening to it several times. She could only muddle through with it. Finally, the chorus came. Before the music on the mobile phone started, the little fellow was already shouting, Papa, Papa, where are we going? After singing this sentence, the little fellow realized that she couldn't keep up with the beat. After a pause, she finally caught up with the rhythm, waved her little hands and shouted, I'm not afraid of anything. After singing, the little fellow looked at Chun Shi with some expectation. Baby, I'm your big tree. I'll accompany you to watch the sunrise for the rest of my life. Chun Shi caught it accurately, which made the little guy immediately jump from the sofa happily, and then directly rushed into Chun Shi's arms. Daddy, where are we going? The song Where Are You Going, Daddy played on a loop. After singing a few more times, under the organization of the little fellow, the game of 123 wooden men started again. But this time there were 3 wooden men. It was time for dinner. The little girl walked in the middle, holding Chun Shi's hand in one hand and Lin Xian's hand in the other. From time to time, she would suddenly lift her legs and let them carry her. After they walked into the restaurant, they randomly chose a table and sat down. The little girl was still singing, Where's Daddy? At this time, Wang Lu, who was not far away, noticed them. She quickly used her elbow to lightly nudge Li Shouwen beside her, indicating for him to look over there. After watching for a while, Li Shouwen's expression became uglier and uglier. Lin Xian and Chun Shi have known each other for a long time. The relationship between them has always been very good. Wang Lu saw his expression and immediately knew what he was thinking, so she quickly said, Why don't we go over and say hello? Let's go. Hearing this, Li Shouwen immediately got up and walked over. Wang Lu quickly carried her bag and followed behind him. Xian, Mr. Chun, you don't mind, right? As Li Shouwen spoke, he pointed to the seat next to Lin Xian. Because it was just dinner time, many guests had not yet arrived at the restaurant, so Chun Shi's table was completely empty. Lin Xian's attitude towards Li Shouwen was still the same as before. After slightly raising her head to look at him, Lin Xian acted as if nothing had happened. She lowered her head again and continued to play with the little fellow. Chun Shi saw that Li Shouwen was embarrassed, so he nodded at him and said politely, We're also here to freeload. Please go ahead. At this time, Wang Lu acted as if she had just seen Lin Xian. She immediately stood up from behind Li Shouwen and ran directly behind Lin Xian. She leaned over and hugged her from behind. Xian, why didn't I see you when I came in this morning? Do you know how beautiful you are today? You almost stole Leilei's limelight. As Wang Lu spoke, she even made a hand gesture with an exaggerated expression. It's not as exaggerated as you say. I'm not the one getting married. Why are you being so sweet? Be careful not to let Leilei hear you. You're done for. Lin Xian really liked Wang Lu's words, so she immediately pulled her to sit next to her. At this time, Li Shouwen also sat next to Wang Lu. After Wang Lu said a few words to Lin Xian, she smiled and greeted Chen Shi. She said mysteriously, Chen Shi, you're really good at hiding things. What am I good at hiding things? Chen Shi was confused by her inexplicable words. Still pretending. Wang Lu looked like she had seen through him. She pretended to be serious and said, Tell me the truth. Did you create the Fuqing building advertisement that blew up my friends that day? Hearing this, Lin Xian could not help but look at Chen Shi thoughtfully. Not long after this incident, she was kidnapped by Zhao Yuan. If Wang Lu did not mention it now, she would have forgotten that Chen Shi had caused such a huge commotion. Li Shouwen, on the other hand, didn't know that Chen Shi was the one who caused the explosion in his circle of friends. Haven't I always wanted to find Ying? So I asked a friend to help me think of a way, but I didn't expect his method to cause such a huge commotion. Your friend is really amazing. If there's a chance, introduce us to him. One more friend means one more path. Don't you think so? Perhaps Chen Shi could not stand Wang Lu's unscrupulousness. After nodding lightly, he did not speak anymore. Wang Lu and Li Shouwen's sudden appearance made Lin Xian's mood turn bad. Thus, she did not speak anymore. She took out her phone and started playing by herself. When Wang Lu spoke to her, she did not say a word. When Wang Lu wanted to lead the topic to Li Shouwen, Lin Xian completely shut her mouth. She did not even make a sound. He had already said so much, but Lin Xian was still the same. Even Wang Lu felt a little bored. Thus, she could only look at Li Shouwen helplessly. Li Shouwen's expression was very ugly. He was silent for a while. Then he suddenly stood up. Without saying a word, he turned around and walked out. This was the first time he had lost his composure in front of Lin Xian. Wang Lu was stunned. She stared blankly at Li Shouwen as he left, until she saw Li Shouwen walk out of the restaurant. She looked at Lin Xian with an exasperated look and complained, Xian, don't be like this all the time. What's wrong with Li Shouwen? Why do you always treat him like this? He's also infatuated with you. Can't you try? Enough! Stop talking! Lin Xian shouted and interrupted Wang Lu. Her full chest rose and fell quickly. It was obvious that she was very angry. Wang Lu was also shocked by her sudden outburst. The little guy also quickly raised his head and looked at Lin Xian. Then, he stretched out his little hand and touched her face. He comforted her softly. Sister, don't be angry. Don't be angry. Lin Xian rubbed his little head. Then, she squeezed out a smile and said reluctantly, Good girl. Sister won't be angry. After saying that, Lin Xian looked at Wang Lu and said seriously, Lulu, I really don't need you to worry about my personal problems. If you continue to be like this, I think we can't even be friends. Xian, you? Chapter 72. Lin Xian's personality was straightforward, and she had always been clear about her likes and dislikes. Wang Lu really did not expect that her matchmaking this time would make Lin Xian so angry. She had done this many times in the past. Why couldn't she do it this time? Wang Lu looked at the two of them in surprise, her eyes full of disbelief. Seeing this, Lin Xian immediately knew what she was thinking. Therefore, after calming down a little, Lin Xian shook her head, looked at Wang Lu and said seriously, Lulu, I really don't like Li Shouwen. I beg you, don't interfere anymore. Okay? Okay. Wang Lu looked at her with a complicated expression. Then she sighed heavily, as if she was lamenting. She said, Sit down. I'll go take a look at Li Shouwen. No matter what, he's our family's breadwinner. I don't dare to order him around like you do. With that, Wang Lu got up and left. Lin Xian did not ask her to stay. In fact, other than being a gold digger, Wang Lu was good in other aspects, which was why Lin Xian had been friends with her for so many years. But it was a pity. The values of the two of them were too different, so until now they could not be the closest friends. In the sea of life, how could one be so lucky? In such a big city, she could not find a single friend that she could confide in. Sometimes, when she thought about it, Perhaps she felt a little sad. After Wang Lu left, Lin Xian looked at the table in front of her with unfocused eyes, and no one knew what she was thinking. Chen Shi waited for a while, and seeing that she was not in a good state, he asked softly, "What's wrong?" After hearing Chen Shi's voice, Lin Xian seemed to have been woken up from a dream. She shook her head and said with a smile, "Nothing. Okay." Seeing that she had something on her mind, Chen Shi motioned for the little guy to come over, and prepared to let Lin Xian be alone. The little guy climbed from Lin Xian's lap to Chen Shi's lap. At this moment, Lin Xian suddenly said faintly, "Chen Shi." "Ah." Chen Shi held the little fellow in his arms and motioned for her to sit still. Then he asked, "What's wrong?" Lin Xian hesitated for a moment before asking in a seemingly casual manner, "Do you have any plans after this?" "What arrangement? I mean, other than taking care of the children, what other plans do you have for the future?" "Oh, I found out that the last time Ying was seen was in Shangjing, so I'll be going to Shangjing soon. But I can't decide when and how long I'll be there. We'll talk about it when the time comes." "You want to find her?" "Yes." At this point, Chen Shi even gently patted the little fellows, but before he smiled and said, "If it wasn't for this little fellow, I would definitely have gone long ago." Hearing this, Lin Xian couldn't help but ask anxiously, "There's no news of her at all. How are you going to find her?" "I'll take my time to find her. Information and clues are all obtained through exploration. It's not something that can be found by waiting here every day." "Then what about the child?" "You're going to find her. You can't take the child with you on the streets every day, right?" "That's why I said I'm not sure." Chen Shi glanced at Lin Xian and said matter-of-factly, "The child is already so old. I just came back. Of course, I have to spend some time with her first. As for when we'll go to Shangjing, we'll talk about it after a while. When the time comes, I'll take Nian with me. We'll walk slowly and look carefully. Just treat it as a vacation." After hearing this, Lin Xian fell silent. After a while, she asked softly, "What if you can't find her?" After saying this, Lin Xian was stunned for a moment. Then she panicked and quickly said, "Uffed. Sorry, I jinxed it. I believe that you'll definitely find Ying. Then I'll count on your auspicious words." Chen Shi chuckled, as if he didn't notice Lin Xian's strangeness. The cruise ship went to sea again. More than half of the guests didn't leave. After all, a cruise ship trip was quite a rare thing. If they could play for free, of course they would enjoy it to their heart's content. Because the voyage was too short, the cruise ship could only cruise on the sea. There was no way to take them to experience the exotic scenery. But fortunately, there were many entertainment facilities on the cruise ship, so the guests could basically enjoy themselves to their heart's content. After the wedding, Lin Xian completely lost her role as the bridesmaid, so she simply moved to the room next to Chen Shi's and played with the little guy all day long. From the children's park to the swimming pool, and then to the bowling alley. The little guy played the children's bowling ball for a while and felt a little dissatisfied, so he wanted to play the standard track. However, even the lightest bowling ball weighed 6 to 7 caddies. She huffed and puffed with great effort before she could lift it up. After she threw it out, the ball immediately fell into the side of the bowling alley. Even lifting the ball was a problem, let alone hitting the bowling pins. Lin Xian let her try a few times. She was afraid that the ball would hit her feet, so she coaxed her out of the bowling alley. In the evening, Lin Xian took him to the top deck to eat barbecue. The little guy pointed to the moon on the sea and sang loudly, "Where is Daddy going?" which immediately attracted the praise of the people around. Several children at the next table even sang with the little guy. The crisp and pleasant children's voice and the crashing waves complemented each other. The whole cruise ship seemed to be much happier. The next morning, after breakfast, Lin Xian took the little guy to the deck to bask in the sun. She had learned yoga, so she made a few simple movements and let the little guy follow her. The little guy sat on the yoga mat and tried his best to learn. Chen Shi couldn't help but laugh at the silly look on his face. Later, Lin Xian gave him a spa treatment and went to the cruise ship's theater to watch a wonderful performance. Although Chen Shi accompanied them throughout the 2 days, he was always like a little transparent. Lin Xian rushed to do everything, which directly led to the little guy's first reaction now was not to call her Papa, but to call her big sister. This also made Chun-Shi feel a little unaccustomed. The little guy seemed to like Lin Xian more and more. Maybe this was the difference between a man and a woman taking care of a child. After all, women were more attentive than men, and it was easier to win the child's favor. However, happy times were always short. Finally, the cruise ship returned to the port, and it was time for this trip to come to an end. On the dock, until Chun-Shi got into the taxi, the little guy reluctantly let go of Lin Xian's hand. "Goodbye, big sister. I'll miss you." The little guy waved her hand vigorously, as well-behaved as when she said goodbye to her grandmother. "Goodbye, baby. I'll come to see you when I'm free." Okay. The car started. The little guy sat in the car, but kept looking back at Lin Xian, who was still standing in the same place. Chun-Shi hugged her and gently patted her back, motioning her to sit still. "Papa, I like big sister." The little guy laughed and gave Lin Xian the highest praise. Chun-Shi shook his head and did not say anything. The little guy happily sang, "Where is Daddy going?" which made the taxi driver couldn't help but praise, "Your daughter is so cute." "Thank you." Chun-Shi smiled and nodded in response. Chapter 73. Maybe because of the holiday syndrome, when Chun-Shi woke the little fellow up this morning, she actually stayed in bed for a long time. At this time, he couldn't spoil her anymore. So even if the little fellow didn't want to open her eyes, Chun-Shi had to get up and wash up with her. After washing up and eating, after dawdling for a long time, the little fellow was reluctantly carried out of the house by Chun-Shi. On the way to the kindergarten, she suddenly asked timidly, "Papa, can I not go to kindergarten?" No. Chun-Shi's attitude was now very firm. For children, he couldn't be too spoiled. The little fellow pouted and struggled to let go of Chun-Shi, but Chun-Shi didn't ask and directly carried her to the gate of the kindergarten. Teacher Wang smiled and said hello to Chun-Shi. Chun-Shi wanted to give the little fellow to her. But at this time, the little fellow suddenly broke out. She burst into tears and shouted that she didn't want to go to kindergarten. After several times of comforting, Teacher Wang had to take the father and daughter to the lounge next door, and then let Chun-Shi persuade her. This situation was very common in kindergartens. After Chun-Shi's patient and earnest teaching, the little fellow finally calmed down, and then said with a pitiful look, "Papa, you have to pick me up." "Don't worry. Papa will pick you up on time. Good girl, you have to listen to the teacher. Okay?" After more than half an hour, Chun-Shi finally sent the little fellow back to the classroom. Out of the kindergarten, the big cat was already standing under the tree and waiting. Chun-Shi threw it a simplified Peiyuan pill that she had made last night, and it was so happy that it jumped back and forth between the trees. "You are a pet, and pets can't enter the kindergarten, so you have to stay outside and don't go in. Okay? Meow." Seeing the big cat jump to the pillar on the wall of the kindergarten and lie down, Chun-Shi was relieved and left by taxi. Chun-Shi had already refined the simplified version of the Peiyuan pill last night. Although Ning Zhonghua hadn't come to get the medicine yet, he had transferred the 10 million yuan in advance. With money, Chun-Shi's plan could begin to be carried out. First, he had to find a storeroom. There was a shantytown less than a kilometer behind Kangju district. The houses there had long been plans to be demolished, but the local residents and the developers had not come to an agreement, so the relocation had not been carried out until now. Chun-Shi took a taxi and looked around. Then he chose an old house by the street. The house was a little old, and the roof was still tiled. It was 3 stories high and had a small courtyard. There was a fence and an iron gate. It looked pretty good. The landlord was an auntie, and she asked for 2,200 yuan a month. Chun-Shi was rich now, and he didn't know if it was a good deal, so he didn't even ask for the price, and directly paid half a year's rent. Including the deposit, it was a total of 15,400 yuan. After Chun-Shi paid, the auntie quickly stuffed the key to him. Then, without mentioning the contract, she went back to the mahjong house next door with a cigarette in her mouth. Chun-Shi hadn't seen such a boorish style in a long time, so he simply tried the key and checked the rooms one by one. After that, he took a taxi and set off again. This time, his destination was the Chinese medicine market next to the Xinguang Temple. This was the largest Chinese medicine wholesale market in Zhonghai. The medicine here was not bought by the kilogram, but by the kilogram. She bought 100 kilograms of cordyceps pupae, but the boss thought that it was too little and only gave him 20 yuan less per kilogram. The original price was 1,000 yuan a kilogram, and the current price was 980 yuan, while Baiji was 600 yuan a kilogram, which was 1,200 yuan a kilogram. She thought it was too expensive, but the boss didn't want to give him less, and said that this was the wholesale price. Well, 100,000 yuan was gone again. Red ginseng was 500 yuan a kilogram, which was much more cost-effective. If he bought 100 kilograms, the boss would give him a discount, and he could take it home for 40,000 yuan. Relatively speaking, ginseng was not that expensive. 600 yuan a kilogram, and 100 kilograms would only cost 60,000 yuan. She bought as he shopped. It wasn't that he didn't have rich customers like him, but it was very rare. So he became famous after a while. She only bought the best quality and the oldest. So, many bosses took out their treasures and followed behind him to promote their medicine. In fact, whether it was artificially bred or natural, there was not much difference in Shi's eyes. He only cared about one thing, and that was how much spiritual energy was contained in the medicine. Because he bought too much, she couldn't transport these medicine back. Zhonghai prohibited trucks from entering and leaving between 6 in the morning and 2 in the morning, so he could only pay the deposit first. At night, the medicine bosses could send him the medicine he bought today. When Shi arranged everything and returned to the kindergarten, it was already 3:30 in the afternoon. Big Cat was still dozing in the sun on the pillar of the wall. The little girl was happily playing eagle catch chicken with the other children under the guidance of the teacher. She stood outside the wall and looked at the little girl's happy face through the fence. In an instant, even his mood was much better. Zhonghai, Binjiang Club. Binjiang Club was jointly founded by several rich people in Zhonghai, and Ning Zhonghua was one of the founders. As the top and most high-end private club in Zhonghai, Binjiang Club was also the most low-key private club in Zhonghai. Every member of Binjiang Club could be called a real rich and powerful person. They could be well-known entrepreneurs, capital tycoons, scholars, heroes, and political leaders. In short, this was an elite gathering point composed of political celebrities, business celebrities, cultural celebrities, and social celebrities. Binjiang Club was famous for its jianghu. On the dining table, there were lively jianghu dishes, and in the business field, there was a chivalrous jianghu token. Every member had their own jianghu token. If the holder of the jianghu token was in any emergency, as long as the token was shown, the chairman had the obligation to convene a hero assembly to organize all members to discuss countermeasures and help the holder through the crisis. Moreover, each member only had one chance to use the token. Binjiang Club was not open to the public, and to become a member, one had to go through layers of assessment. Now there was a saying that without the jianghu token, no matter how rich you were just a country bumpkin who was excluded from the core circle. On this day, Ning Zhonghua, as the founder, suddenly called a meeting. So early in the morning, when Ning Chodong saw Ning Zhonghua put on a three-piece suit and came downstairs, she was so scared that the coffee cup in her hand almost fell to the ground. "Dad, what are you doing?" Ever since Ning Zhonghua came back from Nanyang 3 years ago, he had never worn a three-piece suit. He dressed like a retired old man all day long. Now he suddenly changed into a three-piece suit, with a tie, leather shoes, and neatly combed hair. The sudden change in style made Ning Chotong unable to accept it. Hee, how is it? Dad is handsome, right? Handsome? Ning Chotong looked at her father, who suddenly became more energetic, and asked curiously, "Dad, what are you doing?" Hearing this, Ning Zhonghua smiled mysteriously, shook his head, and did not answer. Seeing this, Ning Chotong immediately stomped her feet. Just as she was about to act coquettishly, Ning Zhonghua made a shushing gesture at her, and then said mysteriously, "Don't ask. Dad is going to do something serious, so I won't accompany you to eat breakfast." After that, without waiting for Ning Chotong's reply, he quickly walked out of the house. then got into the Maybach S600, and slowly left Jinjiang Resort. Ning Qiutong stood at the door and watched the car gradually go away, but her brows were slightly furrowed. What kind of song was this? Thank you to Ning Xiaojia, the nouveau riche girl, for the 50,000 reward. Jiajia is a nouveau riche. I have to hug her tightly. Chapter 74. At this point, the basic structure of the book has been formed, so I'll make my attitude clear. From now on, I won't answer any questions about the plot. I only have one sentence: if you think it's good, then read it. If it's not good, then leave. If an idiot says I'm just being narcissistic, I want to say, are you a moron? Have you read too many novels? You always come here to show off your IQ, but you always forget to bring the most important thing, your brain. Don't you know there's a thing called foreshadowing? You're always wrong here and there. How high do you think your IQ is? Honestly, sometimes when I see your comments, I feel like laughing. Feels like I'm feeding a child. I have to explain things clearly to him so that he can understand what I mean. I don't want to write a running account, and I don't want to write a face for each character. You say it's not reasonable. You finish a chapter in 2 or 3 minutes, but I finish a chapter in 2 or 3 hours. How long do you think you've been thinking? And how long did I think? You can make suggestions, you can find bugs, but please don't make a conclusion without reading the rest of the chapter. That's really stupid. Finally. Chapter 75. Ning Zhonghua looked around with satisfaction. Seeing that the atmosphere in the venue had reached the level he wanted, he slowly said, "Let me make it clear first. Although this medicine can cure all diseases, it can't change one's fate. For example, a patient with advanced cancer who is half a step away from death's door will only be able to extend his life for a while after taking it. It won't cure him completely." Speaking of this, Ning Zhonghua chuckled and said, "After all, this isn't an elixir refined by Taishang Laojun." Everyone was amused by him. Previously, when they saw his solemn expression, many people really thought that his medicine could bring the dead back to life. In short, no matter what illness you have, as long as it hasn't deteriorated to the middle or late stage, your condition will naturally improve after taking this pill. This is a rare opportunity, so I suggest that everyone here should think about it carefully. After all, the youngest among us should be above 45 years old. Money can be earned again, but you only have one life. Even if you're healthy and don't get sick at all, you can buy it and keep it as insurance, right? After that, Ning Zhonghua stood quietly on the stage, giving all the members time to think. Everyone was discussing in low voices. Ning Zhonghua's introduction was very general, and they couldn't test the medicine, so everyone was still a little confused. After about 2 minutes, Ning Zhonghua coughed softly and announced, "Next, I'll talk about the specific process of the auction. There's a screen in front of you that will automatically turn on later. Then you can fill in your bid on it. You can increase the price at any time during the auction. When the price stops at a certain number for more than 2 minutes, the transaction will be considered a success. The starting price is 1 million. Then let's begin." As soon as he finished speaking, all the screens in the venue lit up together, including the big screen behind Ning Zhonghua. It suddenly changed to another image. At the top was the first one, and below it was a series of blank lines. After a member tried to enter 1 million, the big screen instantly showed a bidding ranking list. First place, 1 million. TSK, old Ning really knows how to play. Seeing this, a big boss sitting in the front row laughed and joked with the person next to him, then pressed a series of zeros. The number on the ranking board suddenly jumped, and the number at the top suddenly became 10 million. My wife has diabetes and high blood pressure. It's not serious, but it still affects her normal life. I hope old Ning's medicine is really as effective as he said, hehe. After pressing the number, the big boss didn't even look at the big screen. Instead, he continued to chat with the few members next to him. Looking at his indifferent expression, it seemed more like he was supporting Ning Zhonghua. Thinking about it, Ning Zhonghua was a well-known business tycoon in Zhonghai. He made such a big fuss just to hold this auction. If the price was too low, he would lose all his face. However, what happened next was somewhat out of the big shot's expectations. Not long after he pressed 10 million, the numbers on the big screen began to jump rapidly. 11 million, 12 million, 15 million, 20 million, 30 million. At first it was 1 million, but later on it was 10 million. By the time he received a reminder and looked at the big screen again, the number on it had already changed to 50 million. A total of 50 million. How long has it been? Less than a minute. The big shot looked a little surprised, as if he hadn't come back to his senses yet. While he was in a daze, the number on the screen had already changed to 55 million. This price had the bidder's name on it. The big shot looked back at the member who made the bid with a little surprise, but he saw that the member looked excited and nervous, as if he was worried that the price would change again. Seeing this, the big shot finally stopped watching the show and began to think about the true value of this pill. None of his family members seemed to have contracted a terminal illness yet, but from the looks of it, buying one to keep at home as a precaution wasn't a bad idea. Thinking of this, the big shot couldn't help but change his expression. He finally pressed a series of numbers on the screen seriously. 60 million. This price should be about right. The big shot pondered. However, when he looked up at the big screen again, he still wasn't the highest bidder. 65 million in cash. This wasn't a small number, and there were 9 more. So, the big shot wanted to stand up and ask everyone present, "Is this necessary?" Before he could ask his question, the big screen gave him an answer that he didn't want to see. 70 million. When this number appeared, it was like a bucket of cold water was poured over everyone's heads. The atmosphere in the venue also cooled down a lot. This wasn't a project investment through the company. This was a private payment in cash. 70 million in cash was indeed a bit too much. Everyone present was a sly old fox in the business world, so they were particularly sensitive to cash. Just because he had a net worth of tens of billions didn't mean that he had tens of billions of cash at his disposal. 70 million was already a lot. It was time to think about whether it was worth it or not. Ning Zhonghua stood calmly on the stage. Like Jiang Taigong fishing, he did not say a word. He just smiled and looked at the audience. It seemed that he did not have the professional awareness that an auctioneer should have. Finally, when the 2-minute countdown on the big screen turned red and there were only 30 seconds left, the bid of 70 million was refreshed. 71 million. Even though it was only a million, it was like reactivating clockwork on everyone present, causing the price to rise crazily again. 80 million, 90 million, 100 million. A pill whose true effect wasn't even certain was sold at a sky-high price of 100 million. Perhaps when everyone finally realized that there were 9 pills left, the number on the big screen finally stopped jumping. The 2-minute countdown ended. 100 million. The transaction was successful. Then, an old man with white hair and a beard slowly stood up and politely nodded to all the members present. While he took the lead, he also officially gave a reference standard for the actual value of this pill. With this standard as a reference, the following bids were much simpler. The prices of the next few pills were basically maintained at around 90 million. Once it exceeded 90 million, everyone would consider giving up and waiting for the next pill. Perhaps it was because everyone still had a certain amount of doubt about the effect of the pill. Therefore, when the first few desperate members got the pills they wanted, the price of the pills became lower and lower. The last pill was only sold at 80 million. Then, it stopped moving and began the countdown. Ning Zhonghua didn't panic at all. In fact, he didn't care how much money he could get today. Businessmen were after profits. Ning Zhonghua had mobilized all his connections to hold this auction. What he was after was not as simple as money. He had a big plan. Ning Zhonghua thought while looking at the name of the last bidder. But after seeing the name, Ning Zhonghua was stunned for a moment. Then, he quietly winked at Zhang Jiada, who was below the stage, and he found the figure of the bidder in the crowd. Su Wei, an old friend. He started by smuggling medical equipment. Later, during the craze of state-owned enterprise reform, he used some means to turn a well-run state-owned pharmaceutical company into his private enterprise. Because of this, he completely integrated into the rich circle of Zhonghai. Ning Zhonghua knew Su Wei more than 20 years ago. The two had some small conflicts back then. But with their own development and growth, the small conflicts had long been forgotten. So when they met, they would still smile and greet each other. As for whether or not they were secretly cursing each other, that was another matter altogether. Su Wei had a good relationship with the other founders. In addition, his pharmaceutical business had been growing over the years. Therefore, he was recommended to join the Binjiang Association. In today's auction, Su Wei didn't want to bid because he had always been at odds with Ning Zhonghua. He started in the pharmaceutical industry. Now, Ning Zhonghua casually took out 10 inexplicable pills and they could be sold for a sky-high price of more than 1 billion in cash. How could Su Wei not be jealous? So after hesitating for a while, Su Wei decided to buy one and take it back to the laboratory to study it. He wanted to see if this medicine was really that magical. If it was really as magical as Ning Zhonghua said. He really didn't believe that with their company's research and development level, they couldn't make the exact same pill. Zhang Jiada was an official member. After this period of recovery, he had gradually walked out of the shadow. Therefore, at Ning Zhonggua's request, he came to help him set up the venue. The two were also old friends for many years, not to mention that they had an agreement in advance. So Zhang Jiada didn't hesitate at all and immediately bid 90 million. Looking at the number that suddenly jumped on the big screen, Su Wei couldn't help but be stunned. He had observed for a long time. There were so many people present. Most of them were just here to join in the fun. They were really reluctant to spend 100 million to buy an unknown pill. So except for the few members who were in a hurry at the beginning, those who bid later looked like they could buy it or not. Su Wei originally thought that he could get a bargain, but he didn't expect that he would be bid up in the end. This was the Binjiang auction, not the auction outside. Everyone was a reputable figure, so even if Su Wei knew that Zhang Jiada was very close to Ning Zhonghua, he didn't think that Ning Zhonghua would really let Zhang Jiada be his shill. 95 million. Su Wei gritted his teeth and gave a new offer. But Zhang Jiada didn't even lift his eyelids and immediately followed. 100 million. F***CK. If this time he said that Zhang Jiada was not a shill, Su Wei really didn't believe it. He didn't buy it at the beginning and had to wait until he bid to raise the price. F***CK. Su Wei was now like an arrow on the string, so after hesitating, he increased the price again. 110 million. Seeing this, Zhang Jiada immediately glanced at Ning Zhonghua. Ning Zhonghua clenched his right fist and then quietly lowered his index finger. Zhang Jiada understood, so he immediately increased the price by 10 million. 120 million. This time, Su Wei was really angry. So after seeing Zhang Jiada's bid, he immediately stood up and didn't even bother to lower the price. He directly shouted, 130 million. This was the rhythm of turning hostile. This was the Binjiang auction. Since Ning Zhonghua dared to do this, Su Wei dared to turn hostile. If Zhang Jiada increased the price again, even if it was 1 yuan, Su Wei would flip the table today. Everyone present was smart. Some of the big shots who knew some of the secrets had long understood that Ning Zhonghua was deliberately tricking Su Wei. Ning Zhonghua wasn't really greedy for that little money. He did this purely to annoy Su Wei. So, a big shot closest to Ning Zhonghua immediately coughed and shook his head slightly. That was enough. And Zhang Jiada already understood Ning Zhonggua's meaning. So he didn't increase the price and let Su Wei win the last pill at 130 million. The auction was over. After Ning Zhonghua glanced at everyone present, he slowly walked down the steps. He didn't even want to avoid arousing suspicion and directly sat next to Zhang Jiada. After the two looked at each other, they suddenly burst into laughter. And Su Wei fiercely stared in Ning Zhonggua's direction. The grudge between them had already grown big. 10 simplified version of the energy cultivation pill that was only fit to be eaten by the big cat as a snack. After Ning Zhonghua changed hands, it actually sold for a sky-high price of close to 1 billion. And as the hidden expert that Ning Zhonghua mentioned, at this moment, she was standing in the courtyard she had just rented. Looking at the mountain-like pile of medicinal herbs, she smiled slightly. This time, he must remember to add honey and sugar. There are too many numbers in this chapter. I'm afraid that you'll say that I'm lame, so I combined it into a chapter of nearly 4,000 words. So today is the third watch. Chapter 76. Since I'm the author, not giving spoilers is the least I can do. That's why it's not convenient for me to tell you too much about the plot. I hope you can look for it yourself. The following is a review I saw on a book. I'll forward it to you and hope it can inspire you. The author has already said in Chidian that there is only one female lead, Qin Ruoying. In the book, Auntie Zhang said that Qin Ruoying left a message. If you come back and I'm not back, don't look for me and don't go to my house, because I won't go home. From this, it can be seen that the female lead is not at home, but in a hidden sect. Combined with the female lead's appearance. See Chapter 31. The female lead's pregnancy should have aroused the sect's anger, so the female lead was put under house arrest. In the book, the yellow-dressed girl, Hao Qing, seemed to be kind enough to reveal the news to the female lead, but she had ulterior motives. After that, the female lead pretended to hate the male lead, and her hatred did not diminish, so as to eliminate the sect's malice towards her daughter and her husband. After the yellow-dressed girl, Hao Qing, left, the author deliberately described the words, creak. The door closed again. It also pointed out the deeper meaning of the female lead's house arrest. After the yellow-dressed girl left, the author wrote, there was no longer any anger on her face, only an unspeakable confusion and sorrow. Suddenly, a crystal-clear tear fell from the corner of her eye. The female lead was confused about why the male lead suddenly appeared after disappearing for 5 years, and where he went before that. She was sorrowful because she hadn't seen her daughter for 4 years, and she didn't know if she would recognize herself when she saw her again. The last tear did express her longing for her daughter and husband. This is also the most debated topic in Chidian's book review section. It's about the female lead not being a mother, leaving her daughter behind and running away. Reading civilly, thinking rationally. The female lead's foreshadowing is a bit deep, but the bookworm should be able to see it easily. In my opinion, the interaction between the father and daughter is not as good as Literary Dad. However, the plot is indeed different from Literary Dad. There are too few chapters in this book, so I can't judge the details of the plot. The two books can't be compared, because the style is different. There are many writing techniques, such as flashbacks, interludes, foreshadowing, etc. Maybe I don't have enough strength to write that kind of flavor, but I still hope that you can understand what I want to express. To be honest, I really don't want to write some pretentious face-slapping routine, although I have a deep understanding of this. If you are more attentive, you should be able to notice that there is a difference between the way I wrote the first 40 chapters and the last 40 chapters. I'm changing because I don't have my own style and readership like Okami. I want to keep every reader, so I can only keep trying. I dug a hole for the female lead, and it seemed like everyone was scolding the female lead, to the point where I started to doubt my life. Honestly, I don't think there's anything wrong with the female lead. The big bro above basically pointed out the foreshadowing that I left behind. Although his guess was only 60 to 70% correct, at least he didn't go overboard and make all kinds of random assumptions. He had to be reasonable about everything, and he had to speak his mind. What are you talking about? I'm not scolding you, but I really want to ask you to not be such a straight man. Straight man cancer. Some readers may be too young, so they don't understand the pain and suffering of a woman who is pregnant for 10 months. Pregnancy is a woman's weakest and most helpless time, so they especially need companionship at this time. She disappeared for 5 years. When you were scolding the female lead, did you think about how much she sacrificed? As a mother, she left her own child. Do you think she didn't feel pain? Nyenyen is a piece of meat that fell from her body. Do you really think that Qin Ruoying's character is a 17 or 18-year-old girl? If that was the case, didn't she know to get an abortion when she left? You are all readers, and 10% of you will become my breadwinner in the future. So I can't afford to offend you. I'll do whatever I can to earn money. I'm not stupid, so of course I won't go against money. I've explained the female lead's problem, so it's up to you whether you want to listen or not. This is a serial, so I can adjust the plot at any time. When the time comes, I'll selectively adjust the plot according to the data. In addition, this book is Chidian's first release, so your support outside of Chidian is actually useless to me. Chidian is my boss, of course. As long as you support me, I'll thank you in advance. I'm very happy to see you pirating and scolding each other. So, thank you for your support. I don't dislike pirated readers, so I put up the comments for you to see. I really didn't expect that when most of Chidian's comments section was scolding the female lead, there would be a more fair and objective comment in the pirated comments section. Sigh. This book's reader group, 511793123. Chapter 77. The evening clouds overflowed with coldness, and the silver moon spun the jade plate silently. The night in this life is not long. Where can I see the bright moon next year? September 23rd. Just after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, She was already waiting at the entrance of the kindergarten. At this time, he suddenly saw a brand new holiday notice posted on the bulletin board outside the kindergarten. After taking a closer look, he realized that it was the Mid-Autumn Festival. Today was August 14th on the lunar calendar, which meant that tomorrow was the Mid-Autumn Festival. Perhaps because he had been wandering outside for too long, she never cared about the time after he returned to Earth. 500 years passed in a blink of an eye. For Shi, there was so much time that he began to feel numb. Originally, after a day of adjustment, the little fellow had readapted to the rhythm of the kindergarten. He did not expect that after only one day of class, it would be the Mid-Autumn Festival. A few days after the Mid-Autumn Festival, National Day would come. Holiday syndrome. She felt a headache just thinking about it. Therefore, he decided to take a few days off, and he had to ask her to follow the schedule of the kindergarten. After reading the holiday notice, she came to the wall that he had always liked to stand on. A person and a cat, as usual, looked at the playground of the kindergarten across the wall. However, today, the teacher of the little fellow's class did not seem to arrange for them to play on the playground. So she did not see the little fellow for a long time. An hour later, a pleasant bell rang, and school was over. She stood in the crowd and lined up. As soon as he approached the school gate, he saw that the little fellow had been led by Teacher Wang to the rest area. Teacher Wang. She greeted politely, and Teacher Wang immediately took the little fellow's hand and walked over. A father knows his daughter best. She looked down at the little fellow and immediately found that something was wrong with her. So he frowned and asked, "Teacher Wang, what's wrong with her?" Teacher Wang smiled and did not have time to answer. At this time, the little fellow broke away from Teacher Wang's hand, trotted to Shi's feet, and then hugged his leg tightly. "Oh, you've been wronged?" Shi rubbed the little girl's head and quickly crouched down to pick her up. The little girl hugged Shi's neck and buried her face deep into Shi's shoulder. Shi gently patted the little girl's back and looked at Mr. Wang. He knew that Teacher Wang would give him a satisfactory explanation. However, Teacher Wang's next words made his expression change slightly. "Mr. Chun, Nian just got into a fight with other kids in the classroom. Nian fought with someone?" At this moment, Shi's worldview seemed to have been refreshed. In his heart, Nian was the cutest, smartest, most obedient, and most sensible child in the world. Moreover, she was still a girl. How could she fight with others? Teacher Wang had seen too many similar expressions on Shi's face, so she immediately explained. "She started it first, but we quickly stopped her." Well, this time, She was really shocked. Therefore, She immediately glanced at the little girl in his arms, reached out, and gently patted her butt. He asked, "Nian, is what the teacher said true?" However, after She asked, the little girl lay in his arms without saying a word. She did not even bother to lift her head. This uncooperative attitude confirmed the teacher's words. However, She was not a violent parent. So he immediately asked, "Teacher Wang, can you tell me what happened?" "Of course, this is my duty." Teacher Wang smiled and nodded. Then, she said, Today is the last day before the Mid-Autumn Festival, so the school will prepare some mooncakes for the children. In the process of distributing the mooncakes, she suddenly hit the child next to her, and then the two of them started pushing and shoving. After Teacher Lee saw it, she immediately pulled the two of them apart. However, when we asked for the specific reason later, Nian did not say anything. The other only knew how to cry, saying that Nian hit him. Generally, when this kind of situation happens, we will inform both parents, hoping that the parents will guide the children correctly. After all, children spend the most time with their parents. Children around 4 years old were already exploring ways to interact with others. This process was like a child learning to speak. They would speak the human language with humans and the animal language with animals. Therefore, the correct adult demonstration was very important. When a child knew right and wrong, it was possible to develop the ability to deal with problems and self-control in social conflicts. For children born in a normal environment and upbringing, physical contact and conflicts before the age of 6 were not malicious fights, but to express their emotions at the time. Therefore, when a child used physical contact to express their dissatisfaction, the adult needed to intervene as early as possible to guide them. Although Teacher Wang's words were a little tactful, she still understood. Therefore, he could only smile awkwardly. We did not find out the specific reason for the fight, so I hope that you can have a good chat with your child when you get home. Perhaps she was afraid that she would indiscriminately hit the child when he got home, so Teacher Wang quickly added, Nian is a good child. I believe that she must have been wronged, so she impulsively used such an inappropriate way to vent her dissatisfaction. After saying that, Teacher Wang gently touched the back of the little girl's head. Then, she said to the little girl earnestly, Nian, your father is here. If you have any grievances, you can tell your father, but you must remember that you are not allowed to hit anyone in the future. Okay? The little girl did not respond. She shook his arm and said in a low voice, Teacher Wang is talking to you. Be good, be polite. The little girl still did not raise her head, but she lay in Shi's arms and reluctantly made a sound, indicating that she heard it. I'm sorry, Teacher Wang. I will talk to her when I get home. It's okay. It's normal for a child to have been wronged. You can have a good chat with her when you get home, but remember, you must not hit her. I know. Thank you, Teacher Wang. She nodded and was very grateful to Teacher Wang. Before leaving, the little girl was still hiding in Shi's arms, not even willing to say goodbye to the teacher. She had no choice but to carry her on the way home. After walking for a long distance, she stopped. He squatted on the ground and slowly put the little girl down from his arms. Then, she pinched the little girl's chubby little face and said with a smile, Okay, now can you tell Daddy what happened? Thank you to the owner of The Wind Blows Down for the 10,000 reward. Chapter 78. On the street, the father and daughter stood on the sidewalk and looked at each other. This place was very remote. Even though it was located in Zhonghai, which was one of the top cities in the country, it was still a mixture of urban and rural areas. On one side was an elevator apartment that was under construction. On the other side was an old building that had been built for a long time. After she put the little girl down, she faced Shi and took a few steps back, then put her hands behind her back. Seeing this, she wanted to pull her into his arms. But at this time, the little girl took a step back, as if she didn't want Shi to hug her. Shi looked at the little girl's expression seriously, but found that her expression was a bit strange. She looked like she had been wronged, but she didn't look like she was going to cry. Instead, she pouted and looked very stubborn. 4-year-old children's language skills were not fully developed, so sometimes they could only vent their emotions by throwing a tantrum, rolling around, crying, and other behaviors, like parents, like children. Aunt Zhang had set a good example for Nian, so she firmly believed that Nian would not hit others for no reason. Nian, good girl, did you feel wronged? Tell Daddy. Daddy will redress your grievances. She pulled the little girl again. This time she still wanted to dodge. But if she really wanted to grab her, how could she dodge? So she was immediately pulled into Shi's arms. Tell Daddy. Okay? She scratched her little nose with his hand. At this time, the big cat stood at her feet and meowed at the right time, as if to encourage the little girl. The little girl's long eyelashes fluttered like a fan. Then she twisted her body and said quickly, I want to play with the big cat. Hearing this, she immediately let go of her. Good that she could talk. The little guy held the big cat in his arms and rubbed his little head against the big cat. Then, he put down the big cat and squatted on the ground to stroke its fur. She looked like a child who had been wronged and wanted to hide in the corner and draw circles. She stood by and waited for her for a while. When he felt that she should be almost adjusted, he said gently, Nyen, we should go home. After that, she bent down slightly and extended his left hand in front of the little fellow. Seeing She's outstretched hand, the little guy hesitated for a moment before slowly raising his little hand. His big hand held her small hand. The father and daughter pair walked slowly on the street. The big cat followed them from a distance. When a husky saw the big cat, it immediately rushed over with its tongue sticking out. The big cat ignored it. So the husky snorted and circled around the big cat, huffing and puffing. Maybe it found it a little annoying. The big cat suddenly narrowed its eyes, turned its head and growled at the husky. Meow! The sound was not loud, but in an instant, the husky was so scared that its fur stood on end. It immediately jumped far away and ran faster than it came with its tail between its legs. It did not dare to look back and ran faster than it came. After arriving home, the little fellow seemed to have recovered a lot. Then, she sat directly on the sofa and watched cartoons by herself. She changed his shoes. Seeing that she was so focused on the cartoons, he did not disturb her and walked into the kitchen wearing an apron. She tinkled as she fiddled with pots and pans. Usually at this time, the little fellow would run into the kitchen very clingy, and then be gently pushed out by Shi with a big smile. She obviously had something on her mind today. As long as humans were conscious, they would naturally have something on their mind. A 2-year-old child would have something on her mind, not to mention Nyen, who was already more than 4 years old. It was not difficult to guess a child's mind. In fact, she had already guessed what was on her mind. It was precisely because of this that she chose to let her be alone. A child who grew up in a normal environment must have been taught by their parents from an early age. Don't hit people, don't bully people. This was the first time that Nyen had hit people. It was precisely because she knew that it was wrong to hit people that she had such complicated emotions when she took her home. This was actually a manifestation of not daring to face her own mistakes. She did not regret it, but she definitely felt very wronged. Why was it that others bullied her, but she was the one who was scolded in the end? Even if Teacher Wang did not blame her, she did not blame her either. But at the moment when she hit people, there must be a child with a sense of justice who stood up, shouted that Nyen hit people, and then ran to complain to the teacher. Many parents only paid attention to teaching their children not to hit people and not to bully people. But they did not properly guide their children what bullying was. Nyen felt very wronged. She also felt a little helpless. Others bullied Nyen and Nyen also hit others. Could it be that he, as a parent, had to come forward and kick the child to the moon? Some things seemed very simple, but when it came to it, it would become very complicated. During the meal, the little fellow was silent. After a few mouthfuls with the spoon, she threw the spoon away and sat on the sofa to continue watching TV. Seeing this, she also put down the chopsticks in his hand, then sat down and gently held her in his arms, and accompanied her to watch cartoons. Zhonghai was a coastal city. The sun rose and set very early, and as the sun continued to set, the room became darker and darker. She got up and was about to turn on the light in the room. At this time, the little fellow noticed his movements and thought that he was going to leave. She immediately pulled Shi's sleeve and said timidly, "Papa, I'm sorry." After saying that, her tears flowed out of her eyes like a dam that had been opened. She sat back on the sofa. He gently held the little fellow in his arms and comforted her. "Good girl. You didn't do anything wrong." Hearing this, she finally couldn't help crying out. Chun-Shi waited for her to cry for a while. When he saw that she slowly calmed down, he gently wiped her tears and asked with a smile, "Do you want Dad to beat him up for you?" The little fellow leaned in Chun-Shi's arms, thought for a while, but still shook her head gently. "No, the teacher said that it's wrong to hit people. It's good that you know." Chun-Shi rubbed the little fellow's hair very happily, then held her to turn on the light in the room. Then, Chun-Shi picked up the bowl and fed her step by step. When she shook her head and said that she was full, Chun-Shi wiped the corners of her mouth, then turned the little fellow's body to let her look at him. "Nian, remember, it's wrong to bully people, so don't bully people in the future. But, if someone bullies you in the future, don't be afraid. Beat him hard for me. Beat him until he doesn't dare to bully you in the future. Do you remember?" The little fellow looked at Chun-Shi blankly. Her expression was very cute, as if she hadn't come back to her senses. Looking at her cute little face, Chun-Shi couldn't help kissing her face. Night fell. It wasn't August 15th yet, but a full moon was hanging high in the sky. A smile appeared on the little fellow's face again. The father and daughter each occupied a swing, swaying and looking at the moon in the sky. "Nian, we don't cause trouble. But we're not afraid of trouble. This is what Grandma said." "Who is Grandma?" Papa, will Mama go to the moon?" "No." "Why?" "Because Papa has been there." Chapter 79. The next morning, Chun-Shi's phone suddenly rang. It was a text message notification. Not many people knew his phone number, so his phone was idle all day long. Could it be a message from Auntie Zhang? Chun-Shi thought as she picked up her phone. However, when he picked up his phone and read the content, he froze. "Your savings card account ending with 1517 received 100,000,000 yuan at 10:29 on September 24th. Your current balance is 106,278,486. 00 yuan. 10 million. 100 million? Without thinking, Chun-Shi suddenly understood where the money came from. Therefore, he couldn't help but feel a little emotional. Turned out that money was just a series of numbers for rich people. Sure enough, Chun-Shi didn't wait for long before his phone rang. As soon as he picked up the phone, Ning Zhonggua's hearty laughter came from the other end of the phone. "Mr. Chun, the money, did you receive it?" "Yeah, I just received it. It's like this. The 10 pills you gave me, I sold them for a very high price through some means. I transferred the extra money to your card. You wouldn't mind me doing this, right?" "Of course not. I already took the money for the pills. Even if you sold them for 1,000 times the price, that's your ability. It has nothing to do with me. I'm glad you understand." Ning Zhonggua laughed and paused for a second. He then suddenly said, "Today is the Mid-Autumn Festival. It's an old custom in our country to visit relatives and friends during the festival. So I bought some mooncakes and wanted to bring them to you. Do you think it's convenient?" When Chun-Shi heard this, he couldn't help but laugh at Ning Zhonggua's words. The more he interacted with Ning Zhonggua, the more he saw Ning Zhonggua's businessman nature. It was a source of power that had been completely integrated into his blood, driving him to move in a direction that was profitable. In fact, there was no distinction between good and bad in a businessman's nature of seeking profit. There was only a distinction between good and bad methods. For example, the method that Ning Zhonggua was using now, Chun-Shi thought it was a very good method. This also allowed Ning Zhonggua to gain Chun-Shi's approval. Thinking of this, Chun-Shi nodded and said, "Okay, come. I'll wait for you at home." Hearing this, Ning Zhonggua suddenly laughed and said without any awkwardness, "I'm already at the entrance of your neighborhood." Chun-Shi shook his head with a smile. He was truly speechless at old Ning's eagerness. "All right, wait for me. I'll come and get you." After hanging up the phone, Chun-Shi touched the little fellow's head and said, "Daddy will be out for 2 minutes and we'll be back soon. You just sit here and don't run around. Okay?" "Yes." The little fellow was busy watching the wonderful cartoon at 10:30 p.m. She didn't even turn her head. She just nodded and agreed. Chun-Shi gave the big cat a look, then walked to the door, changed his shoes, and left. Outside the neighborhood, Ning Zhongguo's car was parked somewhere. He was the only one at the gate, holding 2 exquisite gift bags in each hand. As soon as Chen Shi walked out of the gate, Ning Zhongguo saw Chen Shi's figure and quickly went to greet him. "Mr. Chen, sorry to disturb you. How many times have I told you you don't have to be so polite?" Hearing this, Ning Zhongguo laughed and said matter-of-factly, "It has nothing to do with being polite. You saved my life, so you're my savior. A drop of water should be repaid with a gushing spring, let alone a life-saving grace. So this is what I should do. Please don't treat me like an outsider." After that, Ning Zhongguo handed the gift bags in his hand to Chen Shi and then introduced, "The one on the left can't be bought outside. I specially went to Hong Kong to find a master to make it. It's a traditional palace craftsmanship. You have to taste it. You have children at home, so the one on the right is prepared for children. The shape is different from ordinary mooncakes. It's cartoon, colorful and very cute, and it's all natural. There's absolutely no added color. I believe children will like it." Chen Shi took the gift bags and thanked him with a smile. He then invited him to sit at home. However, Ning Zhongguo was a smart person, so he immediately shook his head and said very politely, "I came here specifically to give you mooncakes. I don't have any other intentions, so I won't disturb you. I wish you a happy mid-autumn festival." After Ning Zhongguo gave the mooncakes, he waved goodbye to Chen Shi almost without any hesitation. Chen Shi stood at the gate of the community and waited until Ning Zhongguo got into his old A6. Then he glanced at the van that was parked a few dozen meters away. Sure enough, after Ning Zhongguo got in the car, the van behind immediately started, and then left far behind the A6. This is a bit interesting. Chen Shi held the gift bags and glanced at Ning Zhongguo's A6, then at the van behind it. He couldn't help but smile. Wei Sheng Pharmaceutical, Drug Analysis and Inspection Center. A staff member in a white coat came to Su Wei with a report and said, "Mr. Su, this is the composition test report of the pill. Please take a look." Su Wei took the report and looked at it. He found that it was full of words, and there were many professional terms that he couldn't understand at all. "I don't understand these things. I only care about the conclusion. Just briefly explain it to me." "Okay, Mr. Su." The staff member nodded, then simply explained in words that Su Wei could understand. "After our detailed analysis and inspection, we learned that this pill is actually a simple Chinese medicine pill. The specific composition test report has been listed in detail. According to the formula, we speculate that this pill can only play the role of nourishing the body and replenishing the qi and blood." Hearing this, Su Wei's expression changed. He snatched the test report from the staff member's hand. After carefully reading the test results below, his expression became somewhat uncertain. The day before yesterday, after buying this pill at a sky-high price of 130 million, Su Wei immediately sent the pill to the Drug Analysis and Inspection Center. After the Drug Analysis and Inspection Center finished the test, Su Wei gave the pill to an old employee who had been suffering from diabetes for a long time. It had only been a day since the old employee had taken the pill. Today, when the staff did a full-body examination for him, they found that his fasting blood sugar level was lower than 6.5 millimoles per liter, almost returning to the level of a normal person. In particular, this pill was really as magical as Ning Zhongguo said. Magical medicine. After seeing the power of the pill, Su Wei immediately became a little excited. Ning Zhongguo was in the shipping industry, and he was in the pharmaceutical industry. As long as he got the detailed test report, Su Wei was confident that the laboratory could replicate the exact same pill within a year. Because the comprehensive computer analysis was needed, the detailed test report was not available until now. However, after hearing the conclusion of the staff member, Su Wei subconsciously felt a chill in his heart. He finally believed Ning Zhongguo's words. Ning Zhongguo dared to use his own name as a guarantee. This pill was really something. A hidden master. 100 million for a pill, not expensive. Just as Su Wei was holding the test report and letting his imagination run wild, suddenly, his assistant ran over with the phone in his hand. Chapter 80. Chun-Shi returned home with the mooncakes in his hand. The little fellow was still sitting on the sofa, watching cartoons obediently. From time to time, she would be amused by the plots in the cartoons. Big Cat also liked watching cartoons recently. This fellow was very clever, but it was probably because it had stayed in the mountains for a long time and had not seen much of the world. Therefore, when the little guy was watching cartoons, it usually did not run around. Instead, it obediently lay beside the little guy and watched with the little guy. When he saw something happy, Big Cat would even rub his body against the little fellow. He was really becoming more and more like a cat. When Chun-Shi came back, the gift bag in his hand immediately attracted the little fellow's attention. She didn't even watch the cartoon. She jumped off the sofa and ran over. "Papa, what did you buy?" As she spoke, she reached out to grab the gift bag. Seeing this, Chun-Shi handed her the gift bag on the left. This gift bag was not heavy, but it was a little big. It was about the same size as Nike's medium-sized bag. She carried the gift bag with both hands back to the sofa. After throwing the gift bag on the sofa with some effort, she climbed onto the sofa and then knelt down to open the gift bag. After opening it, she took out a box from inside. The box was very beautiful. There were some cartoon characters printed on it. It looked very exquisite. The little fellow was immediately attracted. She could not wait to open the box. Inside, there were 12 mooncakes with various animal prints on them. These mooncakes weren't big and were slightly smaller than ordinary mooncakes. Furthermore, they were all of different colors, all of which were warm colors. Just looking at them was enough to whet one's appetite. After Chun-Shi put down the other bag, he came to the little fellow and sat down. "Yo, the 12 zodiacs. Can you recognize the animals on them?" "I can recognize them. This is a horse, this is a monkey, this is a pig, this is a rabbit." The little fellow stretched out her small hand and pointed at each mooncake. Then, she reported their names. Suddenly, she stopped and took the light yellow mooncake in her hand. "This is a dragon. I am a dragon. It's mine." The little fellow held the mooncake and giggled. After saying that, the little girl didn't hold back and directly took a bite of it. She chewed 2 mouthfuls, but before she could swallow, she puffed up her cheeks and put the remaining half of the mooncake in front of Chun-Shi's mouth. Then, she mumbled, "Papa, this mooncake is so delicious. You eat it too." Seeing this, Chun-Shi gently took a bite. "Not bad. Tastes like cantaloupe." This mooncake was not a traditional mooncake. The outer shell was a little crispy, and when bitten, it would emit a milky fragrance. When placed in the mouth and tasted it carefully, one would be able to taste the sweet taste of honeydew. This filling was like glutinous rice, soft but not sticky to the teeth. There were also some coconut-like things mixed in it, which was very delicious. To be honest, this thing could not be considered a mooncake at all, but a dessert. In Chun-Shi's memory, mooncakes were supposed to be made of egg yolks, red bean paste, 5 kernels, and lotus seed. Although it wasn't as delicious as the one in his mouth, it was more traditional. Perhaps it was because this mooncake was too delicious, the little girl ate 3 pieces in a row, and then collapsed on the sofa. When Chun-Shi saw her like this, he knew that there was no need to make lunch today. When she was full, she would naturally start to feel sleepy. The little girl watched cartoons for a while, and unknowingly, she dozed off. Chun-Shi didn't want to wake her up, so he didn't carry her back to the bedroom. Instead, he gently covered her with a cold blanket. But just as Chun-Shi was covering the little girl with the cold blanket, his phone suddenly rang. Immediately, Chun-Shi was startled, and he quickly picked up the phone. The phone call was from Lin Xian. After Chun-Shi ran into the bedroom, he said into the phone, "Hello, it's me, Lin Xian. I know, what's the matter?" It's nothing. I just wanted to ask, do you have any plans for the Mid-Autumn Festival?" Her voice sounded a little hesitant. It was slow, but there was a rare gentleness in it. Chun-Shi thought for a moment, but he pretended to answer casually, "It's nothing. I just let her play too much a few days ago, so I'm going to tutor her at home for the next 2 days to adjust her. Otherwise, she'll cry for half a day when she goes to school." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the phone. Then, Lin Xian's voice became a little lighter. Oh, then it's nothing. I wanted to ask you guys out for an outing. It seems like I can't. Then I'll ask someone else out. That's all. Happy festival. Happy festival. After dinner, the little girl watched cartoons for a while. When the moon rose, she took her to the courtyard again. Children couldn't watch too much television, so it was a good choice to take her out to admire the moon. So, the father and daughter sat on the swing like yesterday and admired the moon. Perhaps it was because she was in a good mood today. The little girl chewed on a mooncake while shouting for she to tell her a story. Seeing this, she told her the story of Chang'e flying to the moon. There were many stories about Chang'e, but the most popular one was that Chang'e was forced to swallow a medicine and became an immortal. She was trapped in the moon palace. According to the legend, when the descendant shot down the sun, the Queen Mother of the West gave him a medicine of immortality. The descendant gave the medicine to Chang'e for safekeeping. One day, the descendant's disciple, Fengmeng, took advantage of the descendant's absence and forced Chang'e to hand over the medicine of immortality. Chang'e refused, and Fengmeng threatened her life. In desperation, Chang'e had no choice but to swallow the medicine of immortality. The medicine of immortality was an immortal medicine, so Chang'e immediately became an immortal. She floated off the ground and flew towards the sky. This medicine was originally given to the descendant by the Queen Mother of the West. Although Chang'e became an immortal after eating the medicine of immortality, she couldn't be listed as an immortal, so she could only be trapped in the cold moon palace, never to see the descendant again. The little girl was young, but she seemed to understand the pain of yearning between a man and a woman. After hearing Chunxi's story, her little face scrunched up, and she kept muttering to herself, "Big sister Chang'e is so pitiful." Seeing this, she could only gently rub her little head. Actually, there was another version of the story of Chang'e flying to the moon. That was the version of Chang'e abandoning her husband and swallowing everything for herself. Because Chang'e didn't know that this medicine was only effective for the descendant. After swallowing it, she discovered that she was forever trapped in the moon palace. This was also a punishment given to her by the Queen Mother of the West. Of course, this version of the legend was a bit dark, so she didn't tell the little girl. The father and daughter pair swayed leisurely on the swing and admired the moon. Meanwhile, in the distance, in a small courtyard, a white-robed woman walked out of the pavilion and looked up at the full moon in the sky. She was dressed in a pure white dress, and under the bright moonlight, she was like a piece of white jade, shining brightly. The moonlight was like water, but it was also bone-chilling. Who could understand Chang'e's suffering? 10 frosty shadows turned the courtyard tree. This evening bound people to a corner. Not necessarily. Chang'e was without sorrow and hatred. The jade toad was cold and the osmanthus was lonely. Asterisk 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 chapter 76. Someone asked the use of the poem at the beginning, saying, "I am water." Now let me explain. That poem corresponds to this one. Both poems are called Mid-Autumn Moon. One is by Su Shi, and the other is by Yen Shu. Both poems have metaphors. Putting aside the metaphors, these two poems perfectly fit the theme of this book. Chapter 81. With 100 million in cash, even in a first-tier city like Zhonghai, he could be considered rich. However, she did not seem to have the awareness of being rich. He was still busy buying groceries, cooking, washing clothes, and taking care of the children every day. He was completely the image of a standard housewife. Many people who had money would first buy a house, thinking that they should change to a better environment for their children to grow up in. She did not consider the issue of changing houses at all. There were mainly a few reasons. First of all, this was the house that he and Ying had worked hard to buy before he left, so he had deep feelings for this house. If there was a forced demolition, she might become the most powerful holdout in history. Second, other than the house being a little shabby, the sanitary environment was a little poor, and the surrounding facilities were a little lacking. What else was wrong with it? Most of the residents in the Kong residence district were not rich, so they might often quarrel over some trivial matters. However, if something really happened to a family, the kind of concern and help from the neighbors was not something the rich people who lived in a mansion alone could feel. She was very used to living here, so he did not plan to move at all. He did not even consider redecorating. After all, he used to live very comfortably in the cave, didn't he? But then again, in fact, even she himself did not realize that he was now completely integrated into this society. It was like returning to the feeling before he left. It was a feeling called life which made him feel very comfortable every day. In the morning, after the little girl and Aunt Zhang had a video chat, she hugged her and asked seriously, "Nian, do you still want to go to kindergarten?" The little girl bit her finger and thought for a while. Then she said hesitantly, "I don't want to go." Perhaps she still remembered that she was the one who strongly requested to go to kindergarten. So she immediately said with some embarrassment, "You can go too." After that, she burrowed into Chun-Shi's arms. Seeing this, she could not help but smile and rubbed her little head. It was already far beyond Chun-Shi's expectations that she could endure until now. Children were always curious about things that they had never come into contact with before. It was the same in kindergarten. Nian used to be envious of other children who could go to kindergarten, but when she really went there, she found that kindergarten was actually not a very fun place. She could play once or twice, but if she did it every day, how could she not get tired of it? In fact, Nian's kindergarten was still okay. Teacher Wang was very responsible, and the arrangement of their curriculum was very scientific. There was not too much content that was beyond the syllabus. It was unlike some kindergartens where children were taught addition and subtraction within 10 in the middle class. Addition and subtraction seemed very simple, but in fact, it was a first-grade lesson arranged by the education committee. It was knowledge that only first-grade children needed to know. The reason why kindergartens taught this was because many parents now had the illusion that if their children did not learn it in advance, they would lose at the starting line. Therefore, under the strong request of some parents, many children who were not even 4 or 5 years old could already recite the positive numbers within 100 and the negative numbers within 100 smoothly. This also made the parents feel complacent, thinking that their children were the smartest. But in fact, this was the result of forcing children to remember, and not the result of children actively understanding the memory. In other words, this kind of education method was actually wrong. Except for a very small number of geniuses, normal children were basically at the perception and action thinking stage before the age of 3. From the age of 3 to 6, they were at the concrete image thinking stage. It was not until the age of 6 that children entered the early school years. For example, memorizing mathematical formulas, English words and sentences, Tang and song poems, and mathematical formulas were all learning that emphasized memory. Learning too early was harmful and not beneficial. Why was this? Because children's brains were very malleable. Letting children learn by rote too early would greatly reduce the malleability of the brain, and thus affect the child's imagination. In addition, forced memorization would also increase the child's psychological stress and reduce the child's interest in learning. When the child really started learning in the first grade, semester fatigue would suddenly appear, and the child would not have the heart to learn at all. The young brain needed balanced development. Although the simple memory early development of the child's left brain, it inhibited the development of the right brain, hindering the full development of the brain. She did not understand these things very well. His idea was actually very simple, and that was to create a comfortable and happy childhood for Nian. She did not ask Nian to go to Tsinghua University or Peking University, so compared to grades, she was more concerned about whether he could create the right values, outlook on life, and worldview for Nian. In this era, the right values were more important than anything else. Don't do evil, don't be cheap, don't be a saint, don't be promiscuous, confident but not arrogant, strong but not stubborn, clear distinction between right and wrong, fair and objective when looking at problems, decisive and not sloppy when finding a problem. It took 10 years to build a tree, but 100 years to cultivate people. She had a long way to go. After thinking carefully for a while, she held the little fellow and asked gently, "Since you don't want to go to kindergarten, then don't go, okay?" Hearing this, the little fellow immediately jumped up excitedly, hugging Chun-Shi's neck and giggling, "I don't want to go. Papa is so nice." Mua. She was now more and more clingy to Chen Shi, and of course, she did not want to be separated from Chen Shi. After laughing for a while, the little fellow suddenly tilted her head and thought for a while, then pouted and asked, "But the teacher said that adults have to go to work and children have to go to school. If I don't go to kindergarten, then what should I do?" Chen Shi gently pinched her little nose, then said with a smile, "You're still young. You just need to eat more and grow up quickly. Children can do what they like, so I won't force you. Since you like to play so much, I'll take you to Shangjing. Okay?" Where is Shangjing? Shangjing is the capital of our country. There are the Forbidden City, Tiananmen Square, and the Great Wall there. Do you want to see it? Hearing this, the little fellow was immediately interested in Chen Shi. She stood on Chen Shi's legs and jumped up and down. "I want to go. Yes, I want to see the Great Wall." She did not know about the Forbidden City and Tiananmen Square, but she had seen the Great Wall in children's picture books since she was a child, so she was immediately interested. "Then we'll set off tomorrow. When it's National Day, I can take you to Shangjing to see the military parade." Okay. Every festive season, he missed his family. Perhaps he was infected by the festive atmosphere. Chen Shi suddenly missed his family very much. Nian and Yingying were his only family in this world. Yingying went to Shangjing 3 years ago, and since then, there had been no news of her. After this period of time, the little fellow had gradually adapted to the days when Aunt Zhang was not around. As long as her father was around, she would not be afraid of anything unfamiliar. It was precisely because of this that after careful consideration, Chen Shi finally made the decision. It was time to take the little fellow on a journey to find Yingying. A child could not live without a mother, and he could not live without a wife. "Shangjing, we're coming. Thank you, Lulu Dai July, for your great reward. Thank you. Would you use 001 for the 10,000 coin reward? Thank you to a leaf of red maple from newly transformed Crow Cave for your great reward. I'll check this chapter from time to time. Some readers may have scolded me before, but they have high resistance to drugs, so they still read until now. So, I have to apologize to you, because as long as it's a bad review, I'll delete the post and permanently ban it. But I only know how to ban it, and I don't know how to unban it." Chapter 82. To be honest, the real reason why Chen Shi wanted to go to Shangjing so quickly was he had money. After all, Shangjing was the capital of a country, and the cost of living there was not low. A few years ago, it was very popular to move to the north. Many outsiders with dreams came for the first time. At first, they did not even have a stable income and could not afford the rent, so they could only live in extremely bad conditions in the basement. That kind of life was very bitter just thinking about it. Chen Shi was not afraid of hunger or cold. He was completely a humanoid mecha, and the kind that did not consume electricity. If it were not for the little girl, he would have gone straight to Shangjing the moment he received the news about Yingying. It was not easy being a father, and he was afraid that his child would be wronged. So no matter how much he longed for it, he could only take good care of his child first. Now that he had money, Chen Shi could finally fulfill his ambitions. He took Nian to eat and play along and slowly walked and looked for her. He treated it as a vacation. Yingying last appeared in Shangjing, and it had been 3 years since then. So, Chen Shi did not have high expectations for the result of this trip. He really did not have much hope. But what was the difference between a person without dreams and a salted fish? He had to try first. Now that he thought about it, Chen Shi really regretted it. If he had known that 100 years in the heavenly jade world was only a year on Earth, he would have cultivated for a while more before returning. It was all because he was too excited when he received the news that he did not want to wait a moment longer. He set off in a hurry and paid a heavy price because of it. He had not been able to comprehend the true meaning of the word void, so he had not been able to step into the void transformation realm. This was also the reason why his master said that this was the end of his life. If he could calm down and cultivate in seclusion for 100 years, even if he had not stepped into the void transformation realm, he would have touched the threshold. Unfortunately, it was too late for regrets. Chun Shi's return was exchanged for by burning his blood essence. If the spirit energy of heaven and earth was the origin of all things, then blood essence was the origin of immortal cultivators. Using a forbidden technique to burn his blood essence to obtain a cultivation that was far beyond his current realm was a helpless choice to destroy his future. Chun Shi didn't really care about his future. He was just regretting that he could no longer use his spiritual sense. Otherwise, with his cultivation level, why would he need to go through so much trouble to find someone? The next morning, the flight was booked for 2:40 p.m., first class. Therefore, after breakfast, Chun Shi was very cooperative and sang, "Where are we going, Daddy?" with the little girl. The father and daughter were singing happily when suddenly, there was a light knock on the door. Chun Shi frowned and glanced at the door, but he did not immediately get up to open it. The little fellow was sitting beside Chun Shi. When she heard the knock on the door, she immediately shouted excitedly, "Someone is knocking on the door! Someone is knocking on the door!" Chun Shi did not move, and the little fellow immediately became anxious. She quickly shook his arm and shouted, "Papa! Someone is knocking on the door! Open the door!" "Got it." Chun Shi pinched her little face. Only then did he get up and open the door under the little fellow's constant urging. There were 3 people standing outside the door. A middle-aged man in his 40s. Behind the middle-aged man stood 2 big men in black suits, who were obviously bodyguards. After seeing Chun Shi open the door, the middle-aged man turned his head to the 2 bodyguards and said, "You go down and wait for me." After that, the middle-aged man turned his head and looked at Chun Shi. He asked enthusiastically, "Excuse me, are you Mr. Chun Shi?" "Yes, I am." "What's the matter?" "Oh, hello. It's like this." The middle-aged man laughed and said politely. After a pause, he continued to ask, "I want to take the liberty of asking you a question. Excuse me, do you know Ning Zhonghua?" After that, the middle-aged man stared at Chun Shi's expression, as if he wanted to see something from his face. However, Chun Shi's answer was somewhat out of his expectations. It seemed that he did not mean to hide it at all. Chun Shi nodded directly and replied, "Yes." The middle-aged man was stunned. He did not expect Chun Shi to admit it so quickly. However, he was also experienced, so he immediately laughed and said, "That's great. Hello, Mr. Chun. My name is Su Wei. I've been friends with Ning Zhonghua for many years." After that, Su Wei laughed and extended his right hand to Chun Shi. Out of politeness, Chun Shi shook his hand. Su Wei saw that Chun Shi's attitude towards him was quite friendly, so he looked around. After confirming that there was no one else around, he said mysteriously, "Mr. Chun, I have something to talk to you about. I wonder if you're free now?" After that, Su Wei glanced behind Chun Shi, hinting that he wanted to enter the house. However, Chun Shi had no intention of letting him in. He said directly, "The family next door went out for the Mid-Autumn Festival yesterday. If you have anything to say it here." Listening to his tone, he seemed to be a little impatient. Seeing this, Su Wei could only look around again and said in a low voice, "I'm here this time mainly to talk to you about the pill, so it might be a bit inconvenient to talk here." Hearing this, Chun Shi suddenly laughed. After he looked at Su Wei from head to toe, he looked at Su Wei and said, "You're very good. Yesterday, Ning Zhonghua just delivered the mooncakes, and today, Su Wei came looking for him." It had to be said that Su Wei was really good at finding people and analyzing information. As a businessman, Su Wei was obviously a successful businessman. Su Wei smiled politely. Just as he was about to say something, Chun Shi continued, "This pill is for sale to anyone. I can sell it to you for 10 million per pill. However, you still need to help me find someone. How about that?" Su Wei was a little confused. He felt like this young man in front of him was a bit too direct. He was so honest that he began to wonder if this person was a liar. Chun Shi was a secret weapon for Ning Zhonghua. So except for Zhang Jiada, Ning Zhonghua never mentioned Chun Shi to anyone. But unfortunately, Ning Zhonghua was just a businessman after all, not a senior government official. So he couldn't hide a secret at all. Therefore, Su Wei easily learned about the existence of Chun Shi from the driver. Although the price was a bit high, everything was worth it. When Su Wei learned from the driver that Ning Zhonghua respected a young man very much, he immediately sent people to investigate this young man. Although he was still a little uncertain whether the pill in Ning Zhonggua's hand was obtained from this young man. But there was no doubt that this young man was definitely not simple. Therefore, Su Wei immediately came to visit. What he didn't expect was that this young man actually admitted it directly and even made his request directly. Chun Shi waited for a while. Seeing that Su Wei didn't immediately answer after listening to his request, he frowned and asked, "Is there a problem?" Su Wei just hesitated out of caution. Seeing that Chun Shi was urging him, he immediately nodded and said, "No problem. What a joke." That pill in Ning Zhonggua's hand was sold for 100 million. But Su Wei also knew that 100 million for one pill was the price Ning Zhonghua got through the auction. Once the second batch of pills came out, everyone would understand that this pill could be mass-produced. Naturally, it wouldn't be sold at such a high price. Su Wei thought that although it couldn't be sold for 100 million, 30 to 50 million shouldn't be a big problem, right? This was a good deal. Seeing that Su Wei agreed, Chun Shi nodded and then shouted into the house, "Big Cat, help me get the small white bottle on the table." Then, in front of Su Wei's stunned expression, Chun Shi slowly took the small bottle from the big cat's mouth and handed it to Su Wei. 10 pills, 100 million. When will it be paid? Old Tai, you rewarded me with 100,000 coins for 20 chapters? Rich? Unfortunately, I can't eat it. Unless I kill Zhao Yuan's entire family to get enough. Chapter 83. After Su Wei left Kongju community and got into his car, he still felt like he was living in a dream. It was too smooth. It was so smooth that he couldn't help but wonder if he had been tricked. That Mr. Chun didn't look like a hidden expert at all. Instead, he looked more like the owner of a small store on the ground floor of the community. He smoked all day, sat in front of the cashier with his legs crossed, and watched TV. He didn't care when customers came, and when the customers finished choosing, he would naturally take the initiative to put the money on the cashier. All he had to do was count the money. "Mr. Su, where are we going?" The driver's voice awakened Su Wei from his chaotic thoughts. He froze for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, "To the lab." Although it was almost impossible for Ning Zhonghua to predict that he would set a trap for him here, Su Wei was still a little worried, so he was going to let the lab test the ingredients of this pill again to make sure that the 10 pills in his hand were exactly the same as the previous ones. Su Wei didn't dare to let his employees test the pills again. After all, this pill was too expensive. Su Wei didn't know Chun Shi as well as Ning Zhonghua, so it was normal for him to have some doubts. But in fact, in Chun Shi's eyes, this pill was only fit to be a snack for the big cat. The energy pill was mainly used to improve a person's physique and heal chronic diseases in the human body, so the effect was very obvious for the first time. The reason Chun Shi didn't refine a higher-level pill was mainly because the little girl was too young. Chun Shi still wanted her to have a normal childhood. Otherwise, the little girl would become a human-shaped Tyrannosaurus if she ate a higher-level pill. How could she play with other children then? Before he could scare others, the little girl would already think of him as an alien. After lunch, Chun Shi looked at the time and thought that it was about time to leave, so he put a note on the door. "I'm going somewhere far away." But this time, he didn't write down when he would be home, but left his phone number. After all, he didn't know how long he would stay in Shangjing, so it was safer to leave his number. This trip was still as light and simple as last time. Chun Shi didn't bring any luggage. He planned to buy new clothes for the little fellow when they arrived in Shangjing. They arrived at the airport. Perhaps the painful experience last time had left a shadow in the big cat's heart, so it was unwilling to get down from the little guy's arms. Seeing this, Chun Shi could only glare at it fiercely. Chun Shi's eyes were very lethal, so Big Cat immediately cowered. Thus, it had no choice but to obediently jump down from the little fellow's arms and leap out like a black shadow. Even though both Shangjing and Zhonghai were international first-tier cities, there was still a clear difference between them. As the saying goes, Shangjing is noble, Zhonghai is foreign. Zhonghai had only been open for about 160 years, but Shangjing was an ancient city with a history of over 3,000 years. Therefore, Zhonghai was still too young compared to Shangjing. Shangjing was an inland city, and there were many industries, so the smog was very serious. However, Chunshi chose a good day because it was almost National Day, so the factories near Shangjing began to arrange to stop work, ready to give the city a chance to breathe. This also allowed the father and daughter, who had just arrived in Shangjing, to see the blue sky and white clouds. The autumn air was refreshing, and the hall was full of ginkgo trees. After getting off the plane, Chunshi carried the little fellow in a taxi and went straight to the hotel. Shangjing received more than 200 million tourists a year. It was a very developed tourism city, and now it was the Mid-Autumn Festival, so Chunshi searched for a long time before he found a 5-star hotel with empty rooms near the Summer Palace. The hotel was called Pear Garden, and the architectural style leaned towards the ancient Chinese style. As soon as the father and daughter walked into the hotel, it was as if they had arrived at an ancient palace. There were pavilions, corridors, cornices, and arches everywhere. It really had a special charm. The little fellow had been in Zhonghai for a long time, and suddenly came to a place full of cultural heritage, and was deeply attracted in an instant. The cost of living in Shangjing was much higher than in Amei, so the same high-end villa suite, the same single-family courtyard, the price of the Pear Garden was as high as 18,000 yuan. There was no hot spring in this courtyard, so the little fellow pouted and was very unhappy. But when she walked into the room and came to the master bedroom, she immediately became excited and jumped onto the bed, and then happily rolled on the bed. It was a frame bed with a moon cave door, and there were red sandalwood dragons on the 4 pillars. In addition, the size of the bed was obviously much larger than an ordinary bed, so it looked a bit like the bed of an emperor. The little fellow seemed to like this smell, so she was unwilling to get up from the bed. Perhaps the flight was tiring. The little fellow lay down for a while and actually fell asleep just like that. Seeing her comfortable appearance, the big cat also jumped onto the bed, and then curled up next to the little fellow to take a nap. She glanced at the little fellow, and then gently covered the little fellow with the quilt. He silently sat at the end of the bed, quietly looking at the little fellow's sleeping face. After an unknown amount of time, the sun had already set, and the little fellow slowly woke up. She sleepily rubbed her eyes, and then seemed to be frightened by the dim room, and quickly sat up with her hands supporting her. There were 3 small islands in Summer Palace. Chunshi was now near the Mirror Pavilion Island. The place that the little fellow wanted to go to was the Mirror Pavilion. Most of the scenic spots in Summer Palace were concentrated on the Longevity Mountain in the north. Looking from afar, one could see a scene of bright lights. The Mirror Pavilion was originally a watchtower to prevent villagers from entering. However, during the reign of Emperor Guangxu, because there was no money to repair the Mirror Pavilion that was destroyed by the British and French armies' heavy artillery, the remaining materials were dismantled for other purposes. Since then, the Mirror Pavilion had become a deserted island in the water and had never been repaired. The weather in Shangjing was good recently. In addition, it was the Mid-Autumn Festival, so the moon had been rising for several nights in a row. She carried the little fellow to the lake and used his hand to scratch her nose. Then, he smiled and asked, "Daddy will show you a magic trick. Okay? Okay. I want to see a magic trick." Hearing this, She nodded and prepared to play a magic trick to tease her. But then, She seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly said to the little fellow seriously, "This is a magic trick. If you want to learn, Daddy can teach you in the future. But before you learn it, don't do what I do. It's very dangerous. Do you understand?" Hearing this, the little fellow immediately nodded in agreement like a chick pecking at rice. "I know, I won't learn it secretly. I'll only learn if Daddy teaches me." "Good girl." She gently patted the little fellow's head. Then, under the little fellow's slightly dazed gaze, he slowly stepped on the water. "People can walk on water?" Everything that was happening in front of her was clearly beyond the scope of the little fellow's understanding. So, she immediately opened her mouth and said, "Daddy?" But as soon as she shouted, the little fellow reacted. Then, she quickly covered her mouth with her hand and let Chun-Shi take her slowly to the deserted island. It was not until Chun-Shi walked a distance that the little fellow seemed to finally come to her senses. She did not feel afraid. Instead, she curiously rested her chin on Chun-Shi's shoulder and looked at Chun-Shi's heels. She saw that every time Chun-Shi took a step, there would be a circle of faint ripples on the surface of the lake. The night breeze blew by Kunming Lake, and the moonlight shone on the surface of the lake, making it sparkling. Chun-Shi held the little fellow. Chapter 85. The Pavilion of Mirrors was located on the west bank of Kunming Lake, commonly known as Tuanqing. Therefore, this lake on the southwest side of Kunming Lake was also known as Lake Tuanqing. The outer circle of the Pavilion of Mirrors was about 60 meters in diameter. It was a circular water fortress. Unfortunately, it was destroyed during the reign of Cixi. Now only a desolate island of ruins remained. Lake Tuanqing was the destination of the south-to-north water transfer project. It was also the main source of drinking water in Shangjing. Because there were too many people who came here to swim, in order to protect the water source, the government could only pay the price of destroying the summer palace and depriving the tourists of the view. They invested tens of millions to increase the height and increase the fence to prevent tourists from entering. Thus, it was difficult to recreate the scenery of Lake Tuanqing. There were no private cruises on Kunming Lake. Therefore, if one wanted to get to the Pavilion of Mirrors, they could either secretly swim over the fence or wait for the lake to freeze in winter and step on the ice to get there. This place had been sealed for a long time. It was indeed a bit desolate. In addition, it was already late. The lush trees on the island blocked most of the moonlight. Therefore, it looked gloomy and was especially scary. Chun-Shi carried the little girl and gently stepped onto the Pavilion of Mirrors. What he saw was a burnt tree. Its mottled shadow echoed with the scarred city wall behind it. Through the gaps between the tree roots, he could see the shadow of the Jade Spring Mountain Pagoda in the distance. This place was too remote and gloomy. Therefore, the little girl immediately became afraid. She could only shrink into Chun-Shi's arms as much as possible. Her small hands hugged Chun-Shi tightly. Her palms were cold. This also made Chun-Shi frown slightly. He originally thought that the Pavilion of Mirrors was a good place. He didn't expect to find that it was just a desolate ruin. It was not good to scare the child. Therefore, Chun-Shi gently placed his left hand on the little girl's head. He carried her and prepared to leave. However, before leaving, Chun-Shi suddenly raised his head and looked thoughtfully at the abandoned city wall that was more than 10 meters high. He then stepped on the water again and slowly left. Back at the hotel, the little girl was a bit unhappy. She was probably frightened. Even when Chun-Shi said that he would play games with her, she was not interested at all. Chun-Shi had no choice but to hug her and sit on the bed. Then, he told her Andersen's fairy tales. The story wasn't important. What was important was that her father was by her side. Therefore, the little fellow wrapped herself in the soft quilt and lay in Chun-Shi's arms, listening to his long-winded story. Finally, she slowly relaxed and fell into a deep sleep. The next day, before dawn, because of the special nature of the work, the employees would receive a living allowance of 200 yuan per day during the performance of the business. Even so, taking everything into account, how much was an employee's monthly salary? 50 million. Feng Mintai could immediately pull out a reinforced company of people to serve the god of wealth in front of him. Moreover, their industry was different from other industries. The industry had frequent exchanges, and there was no competition among the same industry. Similar to the business of finding people, when he received a commission, his colleagues from all over the country would take the initiative to disclose relevant clues to him. Then he would distribute the information to his colleagues. Wasn't it difficult to find a person who owed money and ran away, hiding in a small county town? But didn't they also catch one accurately? Finding people was too easy. Therefore, even with Feng Mintai's current self-cultivation, he was so excited that he almost jumped up. Their industry usually required a deposit of 20%. However, because the contract amount was too large, Feng Mintai only symbolically asked for a deposit of 100,000 yuan. Then, he patted his chest and promised that he could definitely find this person. The god of wealth seemed to be very satisfied with Feng Mintai's professionalism. After listening to his bragging, he decisively paid the deposit, then carried the child and prepared to leave. Seeing this, Feng Mintai immediately called for 2 lackeys. The 3 of them escorted the god of wealth all the way downstairs. Then, they nodded and bowed as they respectfully sent the god of wealth off. After the god of wealth left, one of the lackeys asked with a little doubt, "Boss, who is that? Didn't you say that we have to pay attention to style now? Why do I feel that our behavior just now was very degrading?" Hearing this, Feng Mintai jumped up and slapped him on the back of the head. Then he shouted loudly, "Degrading, degrading, what else do you know other than cutting people? That's the god of wealth, my grandpa, and also your grandpa. Do you understand? Learn from me, all of you. Let's go up and have a meeting. Call those guys back. Let's get to work." After explaining the task to Feng Mintai, she took the little girl straight to Tiananmen, ready to play in Shangjing. What he didn't know was, just as he was looking for the help of a private detective, in Zhonghai, Ning Zhonghua and Su Wei also took action. 2 big networks were launched from 2 super first-tier cities in Wuxia at the same time. They were bound to find that person for him. "Brother, don't rush me. The big plot is about to unfold. It's not like the previous small plot. Let me adjust the plot properly. After all, quality is more important than quantity." "Hua Qing, you really don't have to compete with me, because I didn't arrange it and it's not what I wanted. I know you have resentment, but please don't blame me for it, okay?" The white-clothed woman said very pleadingly. The yellow-clothed woman was stunned for a moment, and her expression changed slightly. She thought for a moment, then forced a smile and said, "Sister, what are you talking about? Why don't I understand?" Hearing this, the white-clothed woman could only sigh deeply. Then, she looked at the yellow-clothed woman and said seriously, "Hua Qing, if you really treat me as your sister, then don't compete with me anymore. Okay? After all, you're the person closest to me. Why do you always have to compete with me? That's not what I want. It's really not what I want." As she spoke, the woman in white turned her head to look outside the pavilion and muttered to herself towards the sky. The yellow-clothed woman was silent for a long time. A gust of wind blew in the small courtyard, carrying the fallen leaves at the end of September and making a rustling sound on the ground. Suddenly, the yellow-clothed woman chanted softly, "100 gods descend, the heavenly gate opens." After hearing the yellow-clothed woman's chant, the white-clothed woman was stunned. Then, she could no longer suppress the emotions in her heart. 2 streams of hot tears rolled down her cheeks. Yes, once the heavenly gate opens, the mortal world ends. As she cried, she took off the necklace on her neck. After looking at it affectionately, the white-clothed woman handed the necklace to the yellow-clothed woman and pleaded, "Hua Qing, can you do me a favor?" The yellow-clothed woman looked at her with a complicated expression, then shook her head. "No, I can't help you." With that, she flicked her sleeves, stood up, and walked out of the pavilion. The white-clothed woman stared blankly as she flicked her sleeves and left. Her face was full of despair. Creak. After a soft sound, the door opened. The yellow-clothed woman did not leave immediately. She hesitated for a moment, then suddenly turned her head and said to the white-clothed woman in the pavilion, "If you're willing to give me that necklace, I won't mind." Hearing this, the white-clothed woman's tears turned into a smile. That smile was like a flower after the rain. It was so sweet that it could make everything in the world pale in comparison. If Chun-Shi was here, he would realize that this necklace was exactly the same as the one he gave to Ying. Tiffany, and series. It was an entry-level design with the meaning of not forgetting one's original intentions. It only cost 1,450 yuan, and the receipt was still in their bedside table. This was also the only necklace that Chun-Shi gave her. Thank you, brother Katatsumiri, for building 1,000 stories and being promoted to a guardian. Thank you, Mr. Xiaozhongyu, for the 10,000 yuan reward. As a result, the simplified version of the Peiyuan Dan that Chun-Shi casually refined was actually crowned with a resounding name by others. Defying the heavens and changing fate, the king of hell is worried. Su Wei and Ning Zhonghua were two different types of people. But after all, he was also a successful businessman. So just by relying on his own businessman's intuition, he inadvertently took away the plate that Ning Zhonghua painstakingly set up. Su Wei originally thought that this medicine could only be sold for 30 to 50 million, but it was not until now that he truly understood the value of this medicinal pill. Su Wei didn't know whether Ning Zhonghua was angry or not, but he was angry now. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, but two strangers broke into his house. The appearance of these two people could be accurately described with one word: short and vigorous. They were not tall, about 1.7 meters, and their skin was a little brown because of long-term sun exposure. When they opened their mouths, they spoke a language that Su Wei had never heard before. Can you two change to a language that I can understand? Su Wei sat on the sofa in a bathrobe. He raised his hands high and spoke carefully while secretly looking at the bodyguard who was lying on the ground at the door. He didn't know whether he was dead or alive. Give us the medicinal pill. Hearing this, one of them spoke awkwardly in Mandarin while strangling Su Wei's neck. He completely put on a posture that said he would kill him if he didn't give it to him. What medicine? Su Wei still wanted to play dumb, but as soon as he finished speaking, he regretted it. Because these two people obviously came prepared. When they heard that he was playing dumb, they immediately punched his lower abdomen. Bang! After that punch, Su Wei almost fainted because of the pain. The man pretended to hit him again, and Su Wei repeatedly begged for mercy. Stop! Stop hitting me! I'll tell you the truth. I've already sold all the medicinal pills. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Wei's lower abdomen was heavily punched again. And after this punch, Su Wei immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. Wait. Su Wei was nearly 50 years old. Wine, women, avarice, and temper had already destroyed his body, and he was reluctant to eat the precious medicinal pill. So after taking 2 punches, Su Wei obviously couldn't bear it. Therefore, Ning Zhonghua did not hesitate and immediately shouted, I bought the pills. I can take you to the cellar. Su Wei clearly didn't want to expose Chun-Shi and was afraid of offending Chun-Shi, so he simply pushed him out to be the sucker. But Ning Zhonghua was not stupid. In just a few blinks of an eye, Ning Zhonghua understood that Su Wei must have used up all the pills. Otherwise, with his status, he wouldn't do such a stupid thing like risking his life for money. Since they didn't have any more pills, then in this world, there was only one person who had them. To be honest, if it wasn't for the urgent situation, Ning Zhonghua would definitely not betray Chun-Shi. Unfortunately, there was no other way. He was a fish on the chopping board. His own life was the most important thing. Unfortunately, Chun-Shi was now in Shangjing, so Ning Zhonghua could only silently pray that Chun-Shi still had some pills in his house. The two Nanyang people were obviously confused by these two old foxes. Thus, they immediately began to communicate with each other. During this time, Bassoon's eyes were filled with ferocity, but he was stopped by Yuan Chuntang in time. They seemed to know that this trip couldn't be delayed for too long. Therefore, Bassoon calmed down very quickly. After kicking Su Wei and Ning Zhonghua in anger, He grabbed the two old foxes and walked out of the bedroom. When Ning Zhonghua passed by the living room, he saw Ning Qiutong, who was tied to a chair and groaning. Thus, he quietly gave her a look, telling her not to be afraid. Then, Ning Zhonghua drove the two Nanyang people and Su Wei to Kangju District. 4 a.m. in the morning. Kangju District, Block 5, Unit 1, Room 302. A group of people stood outside the iron gate. The dim corridor light allowed Bassoon to see the note on the iron gate. Gone on a long trip, there was a series of numbers at the end. He might have recognized these few simple Chinese characters, so he immediately tore off the piece of paper in a fit of anger. "Are you guys messing with me?" Because of the language barrier, he had nowhere to vent his anger. So when he awkwardly spat out a few inarticulate words, he immediately grabbed Ning Zhonghua by the neck and lifted him up with his right hand. Ruan Chuntang was obviously more reserved than Bassoon. When he saw that Bassoon was about to kill someone, he immediately grabbed Bassoon's arm and shook his head at him. Then, Ruan Chuntang stood in front of the iron gate and gently covered the keyhole with his palm. Click! A light sound was heard. The door was opened by him just like that. Ruan Chuntang broke in. When Bassoon saw this, he snorted loudly and put Ning Zhonghua down. Then he pushed Ning Zhonghua and Su Wei into the house. After Ning Zhonghua and Su Wei entered the house, they stood aside obediently. Meanwhile, the two Nanyang people started to rummage through the cabinets. At the same time that Bassoon tore the note. Shangjing, Pear Garden. In a pitch-black room, Chun Shi, who was sitting cross-legged on the bed, suddenly opened his eyes. Immediately after, a sudden burst of intense murderous aura scared the big cat, who was sleeping, to the point that it jumped up in fright. Because he always had an unrealistic fantasy in his heart, Chun Shi had never set up a restriction in his house. He had always been looking forward to the day when Yingying would come back. However, he didn't expect that it wouldn't be Yingying who would come, but a thief. Chun Shi silently sensed the commotion from afar. When Bassoon tore the note from the fridge and the bedside table, he completely exploded. Chun Shi cast a meditation incantation on the little girl with a solemn expression. Then, he wrapped the little girl in a blanket and carried her to the courtyard. When the big cat saw that the situation wasn't right, it immediately jumped into Chun Shi's arms. Then, it stuck out its butt and tried its best to squeeze into the little girl's blanket, poked its head out and looked around. It didn't know what Chun Shi was up to in the middle of the night. Just as it was feeling confused, Chun Shi let out a loud snort. Then, he carried them and soared into the sky. There was no sense of weightlessness or the sound of wind. The big cat peeked its head out and immediately started to meow in shock. The brightly lit city of Shangjing became smaller and smaller. In the blink of an eye, it gradually disappeared from its sight. Chun Shi was really enraged. It was as if a bone-piercing cold wind had suddenly blown over, so cold that goosebumps appeared all over his body. Chun Shi acted like he didn't hear Ning Zhonggua's words. However, Bassoon and Ruan Chuntang, who were looking for pills in the master bedroom, heard it. They immediately stopped what they were doing, got up, and walked out of the bedroom. Bassoon was stunned when he came out, because he just realized that there was a strange young man in the room. The young man was hugging a blanket. There was a little girl sleeping soundly under the blanket, and a cat poking its head out. It was a very strange combination. Ruan Chuntang walked out of the room while Bassoon was in a daze. However, when he saw the young man, his reaction was completely different from Bassoon's. Without any hesitation, Ruan Chuntang's muscles tensed up. He was short in stature, but his muscles were as strong as a small mountain. He looked particularly fierce. There was a murderous aura. Strike first and gain the upper hand. As a result, Ruan Chuntang bent his legs and his whole body suddenly shot out like a cannonball, fiercely charging towards Chun Shi. Ning Zhonghua saw this and immediately warned nervously, "Mr. Chun, be careful. He might be." Unfortunately, Ruan Chuantong's movements were faster than Ning Zhongguo's mouth. Before Ning Zhongguo could finish, Ruan Chuntang was already in front of Chun Shi. However, what happened next made Ning Zhongguo's jaw drop. Ruan Chuntang was about 1 or 2 meters away from Chen Shi when his body suddenly stopped moving. Then, he fell to the ground for no reason. If one had to describe it, Ruan Chuntang looked like he had crashed into tempered glass. Ning Zhongguo was standing next to Chun Shi, so he saw the whole process clearly. So much so that he dared to pat his chest and guarantee that Chun Shi absolutely did not do anything. It was Ruan Chuntang who suddenly fell down inexplicably. After witnessing Ruan Chuantong's sudden collapse, Bassoon couldn't help but feel puzzled. However, he quickly came back to his senses. Something was wrong. Bassoon let out a roar and charged at Chen Shi. His movements were fast, and his momentum was even fiercer than Ruan Chuantong's. However, he left as quickly as he came. Chun Shi waved his sleeves and Bassoon flew backward at an even faster speed. After sending Basin flying, Chun Shi seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly raised her hand to stop him. Bassoon, who was about to hit the wall, suddenly stopped in midair in an extremely strange posture that didn't conform to the laws of physics. Then, Chun Shi pressed his palm down. Bassoon's body flew back and heavily smashed into Ruan Chuantong's body. Ning Zhongguo and Su Wei were stunned. Both of them were over 100 years old. They had never seen such a strange scene. Su Wei was paralyzed on the spot. His legs gave way and he fell to the ground as if he had no bones. Ning Zhongguo's reaction was much better than Su Wei's. Chapter 91. Demon, Demon. When Ning Zhongguo saw the big cat turn from a kitten into an adult leopard, he finally broke down. Chun Shi's living room wasn't very big to begin with, and the 2 people lying on the ground took up a lot of space. When the big cat turned back to its original form, its huge body would probably touch Ning Zhongguo even if it turned around. In fact, it wasn't that big before, but because it had eaten too many energy cultivation pills recently, and because it had finally mastered the great wilderness physical conditioning technique, its body size had increased by 1/3. Ning Zhongguo leaned against the wall, paralyzed. Because he was too scared, all the strength in his legs disappeared. This caused him to slowly slide to the ground, and his mouth unconsciously muttered the word, demon. The big cat didn't seem to like being called a demon, so it immediately turned around and slowly moved its head closer to Ning Zhongguo. Perhaps it was because its body had grown larger, its vertical pupils looked particularly terrifying now. A cat's eyes were different from a human's. A small light source could cause their eyes to emit light, so the big cat's eyes constantly reflected a faint green light under the light. However, it was this pair of eyes that the little guy called emeralds that scared Ning Zhongguo so much that he was about to go crazy. Don't come over. Don't come over. He didn't look like a business tycoon anymore. He looked like a drowning person, crazily waving his legs and waving his hands. Even if he had to crawl away from the big cat. The big cat probably wanted to tease him, so it suddenly grinned, revealing its mouth full of sharp teeth. Just as Big Cat was slowly walking towards Ning Zhongguo with a grin on its face, Chun Shi finally spoke. That's enough. Big Cat, don't scare him anymore. What are you doing? Hurry up and do your work. It'll be troublesome if someone sees you in the morning. Hearing this, the big cat shook its head unhappily, then turned around and bit Ong's leg, dragging him outside. Chun Shi's words were like music to Ning Zhongguo's ears, and he immediately came back to his senses. Yes, Mr. Chun was still here. This? Cat? Or leopard? Anyway, it was Mr. Chen's pet, so it definitely wouldn't hurt him. After thinking through this point, Ning Zhongguo finally managed to calm down his mind. Then, he sat on the ground a little dejectedly, and looked at Chun Shi with a very complicated gaze. The room was a little quiet, except for the rustling sound of the big cat dragging people away. Chun Shi hugged the blanket, and looked at the little guys with his head, and finally calmed down. He couldn't help but reach out and pinch the little guy's cheeks, then suddenly asked, "Tell me, what happened today?" When Ning Zhongguo heard his question, he immediately got up from the ground, slightly bowed, and answered nervously, "Mr. Chan, It's like this. Chapter 92. Chun-Shi quietly cleaned up the house. There were all kinds of receipts in the drawer under the TV. Receipts for electricity, water, and gas were thrown all over the floor by the two bastards. There were a lot of receipts, some of which even began to turn yellow. Chun-Shi picked up one of them and looked at it. He found that the payment date was 6 years ago. At that time, he hadn't left yet. Humans were nostalgic creatures. So even if these receipts were meaningless, Chun-Shi still picked them up one by one, folded them, and put them back in the drawer. In fact, there was nothing valuable in his house. The only thing that was valuable was Chun-Shi's memory. The master bedroom was even more messy. The clothes in the closet were thrown everywhere. Chun-Shi picked up the clothes one by one and hung them up. In this pile of colorful clothes, except for his old clothes, there was only the little guy's clothes. As for Yingying's clothes, there was not a single one. After tidying up the closet, Chun-Shi remade the bed on the floor. Then, he moved the bedside table that was moved aside by Basin back to its original position. When Chun-Shi was tidying up the bedside table, he suddenly froze, because he saw the receipt. Tiffany Company, Return to Tiffany series. It means to never forget one's original intention. Cost: 1,450 yuan. That was when he secretly bought it for Yingying on Valentine's Day. Chun-Shi still remembered Yingying's expression when she received the necklace. After all, 1,450 yuan was enough for him to live on for 2 months. It was a speechless and happy expression. It was sweet. But although Yingying was very happy at the time, she repeatedly asked him not to buy such expensive gifts in the future. So from then on, he didn't buy any expensive gifts anymore. While recalling the past, Chun-Shi picked up the box that was originally used to store the necklace from the bedside table. The box was empty. After thinking for a while, he put the receipt in and closed the drawer reluctantly. His house had almost been raided. When the two bastards were rummaging through the house, they also kicked up a lot of dust. Therefore, after Chun-Shi tidied up the room, he took a broom and a mop and carefully cleaned every room. Then, he gently carried the little girl from the sofa to the bed. The blanket that covered the little guy was still from the hotel, but now it was obviously unceremoniously taken over by him. The big cat went out to work for a long time. Around dawn, it finally came back in through the window. At this time, the big cat had already shrunk to the size of a kitten. Therefore, as soon as it got home, it wanted to crawl into the little girl's bed. However, just as the big cat jumped onto the bed, Chun-Shi suddenly kicked it back down. "Go take a shower." Meow. Hearing this, the big cat meowed angrily, but there was no other way. There were many ways parents could educate their children. Chun-Shi chose the most relaxed, non-controlling education method. This kind of education method had advantages and disadvantages. On the positive side, it could let the child's personality develop freely, fully show the child's nature, and open up the limitations of thinking. On the negative side, it was easy for the child to lose self-control, lack of self-control, and lack of sense of responsibility. There were advantages and disadvantages to each education method, but the one that really played a decisive role was obviously the image that parents imperceptibly established in their children's daily lives. That was also the benchmark for the child's future growth. As the saying goes, dragons give birth to dragons, phoenixes give birth to phoenixes, and mice give birth to sons that know how to dig holes. Learning to guide the right way, not to control too much, was what every parent should do. After serving the little guy breakfast, Chun-Shi cleaned up the kitchen and watched cartoons with her. But after looking at it for a while, his phone suddenly rang. The caller was Feng Mintai. "Hello, Mr. Feng?" "Mr. Chun. Good news. Great news. We finally found a useful clue." As soon as the call was connected, Feng Mintai's voice came through. Looking at his attitude, he was probably even more excited than Chun-Shi. After Chun-Shi heard his words, The first reaction in his mind was, sure enough, money was omnipotent. This chapter's background music, Winter's Secret by Zhou Chuanxiong, because it didn't match, it wasn't played. She's 56 years old now. 20 years ago, she worked at Shangjing's Rainbow Employment Agency. Because the employer was unwilling to sign a contract with the agency only took the intermediary fee and didn't sign the contract on her behalf. Her labor contract was signed directly with the employer, and it was a 10-year contract. The copy of the contract is with me now. Hearing this, she couldn't help but feel a little emotional. He had been hiding under the light all this time. Ying's information wasn't easy to find, but Aunt Zhang's information was easy to find. Because she had promised Ying, Aunt Zhang had been unwilling to tell him anything about Ying's family. She respected her a lot. Seeing that she was unwilling to talk about it, she didn't continue to ask, let alone force her to talk. So much so that she didn't even think of investigating Aunt Zhang and finding clues about Ying from her. Feng Mintai was indeed an expert in this field. In just 3 days, he actually managed to find some useful clues. Therefore, she immediately asked, their previous address should be on the contract, right? Where is it? There should be. Please wait a moment, I'll read it to you right away. After saying that, Feng Mintai coughed lightly again, and then dilly-dallied on the other end of the line. Who knew what he was doing? Obviously, his old habit was acting up again. She was so angry that his eyelids twitched. He gritted his teeth and warned him word by word. Read! Here. Me. Listen. If Feng Mintai was in front of him now, she really couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't strangle him to death. Okay. Boss. I'll read it to you now. Listen carefully. Party A, Qin Yongyan. Party B, Zhang Chuanju. According to the contract law of the People's Republic of Wuxia and other relevant laws and regulations, Party A and Party B, based on the principle of equality and voluntariness, have reached the following agreement regarding the provision of nanny services by Party B for Party A. Feng Mintai read the contract from the beginning to the end. However, when she heard the first sentence, he was stunned for a moment, and then muttered to himself, Qin Yong, it should be a man? Ying was only a few years old at that time. Aunt Zhang must have taken care of her. So the man who signed the contract with Aunt Zhang, maybe he was Ying's father? Father-in-law? This was a serious matter, so she immediately engraved this name in his mind. This contract is made in triplicate. Party A, Party B, and the guarantor each hold one copy. It will take effect from the date of signing. Party A's signature, Qin Yongyan. Party B's signature, Zhang Chuanju. Boss, I've finished reading. Hey, there's no address on this contract? Feng Mintai didn't pretend to be crazy this time. When he found that there was no address on the contract, he immediately became nervous. The yard was very clean, and there were not many fallen leaves on the ground. It didn't look like it had been empty for a long time. She carried the little fellow through the yard and stood directly outside the door of the main room. This was not a bedroom, but the main hall of the Sihiyuan, which was equivalent to the current living room. She gently pushed the door and entered. The first thing he saw was a large red sandalwood table with carved dragons, and 2 rows of chairs were placed in front of the table. There were a total of 8 chairs, 4 on each side. There was a couplet hanging above the table. It was not appropriate to call it a couplet, because what was written on it was clearly a poem. The heavenly gate is broken, and the Chu River opens, and the blue water flows to the east. It was from Li Bai's, looking at the heavenly gate mountain. She carefully patrolled around the room, and Feng Mintai also jumped in. Like a bootlicker with a mustache, he followed behind Shi and looked around. Boss, who are you looking for? The furnishings in this house look extraordinary. It must have been a rich family in the past. She didn't pay attention to him. Instead, she carefully patrolled around the room. When he walked to the large red sandalwood table, she suddenly froze. There was a necklace on the table. It was the one he gave to Ying. She held the little fellow in his right hand and gently picked up the necklace from the table with his left hand. He carefully rubbed the pendant of the necklace. At this time, the little fellow suddenly reached out and grabbed the other end of the necklace, and then looked up and asked, "Papa, what is this?" "This is Mom's necklace. I gave it to her." Hearing this, the little fellow pouted and thought for a moment. Then, she pulled the necklace from Shi's hand and hid it in her arms like a treasure. "Mama's is mine. I want this." "Well, it's yours from now on. Come on, Dad will put it on for you." She gently put the little fellow on the ground, and then took the necklace from her hand. The little fellow looked up happily, as happy as when the kindergarten teacher put the little red flower on her. She squatted on the ground, ready to put the necklace on her. At this time, the little fellow saw the strange look on Shi's face. You're tuning in to the Legend of the Vagabond YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.